gonna have any fights this week? Oh man, we gotta have some fights.
On the 4th of July, 1929, Al Davis was an All-American original. Known as a maverick, Davis was also savvy. At the age of 36, Davis was named commissioner of the AFL, and his backroom acumen helped facilitate the merger between the rival NFL and the AFL. Davis loved the game of football more than the business of football. Always on the lookout for new talent, Davis's keen eye helped salvage countless careers, including Super Bowl MVP Jim Plunkett. In fact, Davis has presented 9 men for induction into the Hall of Fame, more than anyone else. Davis defies easy classification because he was an original. Scout, coach, commissioner, and owner, Davis took a path unlike anyone before. Though a complex man, his motivation was perfectly simple.
The fire that burned brightest in me and the fire that burns brightest in this organization is the will to win.
The poet William Butler Yeats wrote that there was one myth for every man, which, if we knew it, would make us understand all that he did and thought. Al Davis's myth was the Raiders. He created their mystique and burnished their aura until they became unlike anything in football. Authors of the impossible, the Silver and Black's library of fantastic finishes include many of the game's greatest plays.
Here comes the rush. He sidesteps. Can he throw? He can't. The ball flipped forward is loose. A wild scramble. 2 seconds on the clock. Casper grabbing the ball. It is ruled a fumble. Casper has recovered in the end zone. The Oakland Raiders have scored on the most zany, unbelievable, absolutely impossible dream of a play.
Looking. He's under the gun. He's tied. He throws. It is. Oh, he caught it.
Unbelievable. Al Davis loved pro football. And for a man impossible to define, 3 little words will have to suffice.
Just win, baby.
Right there. Just taking you back, a memory lane. The old Oakland Raiders, the old LA Raiders, the old Mystique. But that's what this show is about on the eve of what would be Al Davis's 95th birthday. We bring you the Al Davis special, and it's me, Oakland Raider Savage, and to my, which is it, my left or my right? I don't know. Mr. Jim Otto of the show himself, never missed an episode. Asylum, how you doing?
I'm doing good. Excited about the show. We got some good guests coming on, and I'm ready to get this shit going.
All righty. And this is a special show. We've been working on this episode for a couple weeks now because we knew Al Davis's birthday was coming up. Of course, you saw the flag. So on Independence Day, of course, our godfather, Al Davis, was born on Independence Day in 1929. And, this is our holiday tomorrow. Shooting fireworks for Al Davis. But let's stop talking. Let's just, let's go into our shameless plug. Hold on, cut off. There you go. Cut off the music. Let's go into our shameless plug. Asylum, take it away. Wait. Let me find it. Okay, take it away.
Okay. Oh, there it is. There you go. Go to the YouTube channel, The Cage Match Show. Like, share, subscribe. Hit the thumbs up. Hit that bell so you know every time that we drop a video. If you don't do YouTube, you can catch us on Facebook, on the Oakland Raiders Savage Facebook page or the Asylum Facebook page. Then go to WGG. Go ahead and put your order in. When you check out, go to the discount code, put Cage Match, one word, and get 10% off your complete order. Do your thing.
And when you think of wins, you think of dubs. And when you think of dubs, think of W. Get that energy like Max Crosby. Cage Match, one word, in a discount code. Get 10% off all of your whole order. Make sure you do that, please, because we got some bills to pay. And also, special shout out to Fabian, the Copa Fabian, RaiderNationForLifer.com. Go over there. I only wear hats made and distributed by Fabian himself. Is www.r and the number 4 lifer.com, just in case you're listening to audio version only, which is just without the screen. And with that, we also want to give a shout out to, you saw the comment on the bottom, RaiderMan19.com. He will get his podcast coming up soon. You always see him on the show, but go to his website. He got some merch going on. And like we always are trying to do, we're trying to push him to get to the torch. Imagine hearing that. You heard it in the intro. Imagine hearing him do that oath in front of 65,000 people at Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas in front of the torch. Get the Oakland Mystique, the Oakland way. Sorry. They get the Raider Mystique, the Raider way, depending on which generation you are a part of Raider Nation. Get them fired up. And with that, let's go into, because we have a special guest right now. He is the writer, there you go. The writer of this book.
The author.
You got the co-author. Okay, oh my God. Co-author. Every time we have a special guest, I can't speak. So he is a co-author.
One of the co-authors of the Al Davis Behind the Raiders Shield, the untold stories from long time Davis confidants. And I could say this much: this is a book that any real Raider fan needs to read, or you can even go on Audible and get the book and listen to it. That's how I do it. And I'm telling you, it is something you have to read or listen to if you're a diehard Raider fan.
Oh, yeah. And we got the link in the description, so make sure you go over there, because I read the book. I read the book a couple years ago. I need to get the audio so I can listen to that while I make my deliveries at my current job right now. Give me some inspiration on history of the Raiders and Al Davis, but I'll do the video. So without further ado, I believe that is the same. Let's go into why we're all here. Let's go into it right now. A Raider Great Conversation.
When you have great coaches, then after you have great coaches, you get great players. You have a great organization, and you tell them one thing: just win, baby.
Wait, Let's move it over here. It's not about me. It's about you, Mr. Jon Kingdon. He was when he was part of the organization, he was one of Al Davis's scouts, but he was also up there in the front office with Al Davis, introducing to everybody. Basically, he's an historian. Mr. Jon Kingdon himself, right here. There we go.
No, thank you so much. It's great to be here. You know, it's a sad thing. Since they said when you referred to Asylum as, you know, the Jim Otto, and it just brought it back to me. You know, Jim just recently passed away, which was kind of sad. And you know, that's one of the, you know, sports is such a great thing, but you know, people don't live forever. Even I don't know if you recall, Arthur Whittington was a running back, had a nice career with us. He recently passed away too. But anyway, not to be downers, but those two guys, and it's nice to kind of bring them back and remember them, even though they're like I said, they're gone now. But thank you so much. This is great to be here, to be with true fans. And you know, I know your audience is great. There's Anna. So nice to have you. Nice to see you, and I appreciate your welcoming me. That's very nice.
Anna is one of the ones that are always on. She's been on with us ever since we started this podcast.
Yes. So, what was it? Well, let's start off with Al Davis. What was it like working with Al Davis himself? Basically being right there with the man, the myth, the legend that is Al Davis. What was it like being there and basically seeing Raider history unfold while working with the Raiders?
Well, I started as an intern in 1978, and I think with most people that start with him, you really had to prove yourself to him. He didn't. It took a while for him to kind of trust you in a lot of ways, and you know, and as I started to learn, you know, you walk in there, you think you know a lot, and I really didn't know a lot about anything. Like the first time I tried, you know, I was going to write a report, and I looked at this piece of paper, and I said, "What the heck?" And so I basically, you know, I read. When I started in scouting, I would basically, if I was doing a receiver, I get the receiver's book and read everyone's reports and such. And so when I was able to establish some credibility that way, you know, it really helped in dealing with them. You know, one of the things that did help is, you know, we had some things in common that they kind of allowed us to connect a little bit and made him feel more comfortable around me. We're both New Yorkers. I was born in Brooklyn and grew up on Long Island. He was born in Massachusetts and grew up in Brooklyn. And, you know, we both had a great love of sports, not just football. And I could, you know, just as a kind of a funny thing, I remember I walked in his room in 1991, I remember, and I could say something like, you know, this was the 40th anniversary of Bobby Thompson's home run, you know, with the New York Giants that beat Brooklyn in the playoffs. And I could say, you know, where were you then? And, you know, and he's not one for small talk. Let me think. Yeah, I was coaching at Adelphi, and somebody came running out to practice. I mean, that was kind of fun stuff, and also the fact that we were both Jewish, I think, made him also a little more comfortable. And just not to get into too much religion, but you know, the two big holidays are Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, the New Year and the Day of Atonement, and Yom Kippur is the one you have to fast on for the day. And so it was around Rosh Hashanah, and he said to me, "Is this the big one? Is this the one you don't eat on?" You know, that he could ask me something like that, as opposed he wouldn't feel comfortable with other people. But you know, the more, you know, dealing with Al, you know, the biggest thing was if he ever asked you a question and you couldn't answer it, I always made it a point to remember to be prepared for that question, whether it's about a player or a situation and such. You know, I would know to do that. And then he also passed on an attitude of, you know, one time he asked me to do something. It was really something I was really unfamiliar with and such. And I said, yeah, it's going to be kind of hard to do. He says, "Don't tell me it can't be done. Just do it." And, you know, when you take that attitude, it's amazing how much you can get done. So, you know, as we, you know, moved on, and, you know, he liked my company. He used to have somebody drive him to dinner and, you know, make him wait outside. But I used to always go in every Thursday. "Come on, let's go to Nate Now's. Come on, let's go." And we'd have dinner, and he'd be on his car phone. And just one little story, I think it's in the book. You know, he'd call anybody any hours. So he called Bill Parcells, and you know, they're talking. He says, "Bill," and I think I put this in the book. He says, how are you keeping Lawrence Taylor clean? And Bill says, can I talk? And he looks at me and kind of winks. He says, sure, Bill, go ahead. He says, I make him pee in a bottle every day. And he says, and Al says, that's legal? You can do that? I don't care if it's legal. I make them do it. That's how I'm keeping them clean. But hey, that was kind of inside stuff. Was always kind of fun. Kind of be around him in that regard.
Yeah, that was in the book. That was in the book. I remember that story. I just actually finished the book today, so I'm kind of on the back half of the book. I'm kind of refreshed up, but I remember that story being in the book, and I actually loved how that book started. That's my favorite part, where it says, "If we're going to tell the story, we're going to tell the story warts and all."
Yeah,
I like
that's right.
I like the fact that it's not just the good about Al Davis. It was all sides of Al Davis. You saw the good, the bad, and actually a lot of that book goes through a whole lot of the ups and downs that the Raiders went through with dealing with Al and everything, and exactly explain some situations why we drafted a player this way or different things going. And to me, that's one of the best insights to the Raiders and everything, and Al Davis.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Greg, if you're familiar with Greg Papa, was the longtime play-by-play guy out here, and I'm really good friends. I used to actually spot for him during the game, so we got to be really good friends. And he was the first guy that we gave an interview to. He has a local show out here, and he started. And he had read it. And he said, this is the best and most honest book I've ever read about Al Davis and the Raiders. He says, and I've read them all. And again, we were not out to embarrass anybody. When I told people, particularly with the organization, that we were Bruce and I were working on this book, someone said, is it going to be a rip job? I said, absolutely not. It's going to be an honest book, and I think that's what we were. And, some people took some offense to it, but, again, I don't think believe me, you could do an embarrassing book on anybody. And I don't think we put anything in there that was embarrassing, personally embarrassing or whatever. It was just, obviously that was the truth of what happened. And we were in the room, and, I know Ron Wolf, who was there before me, who was truly great. He wrote a book and I got it, but it was really more about philosophy and such, and nothing, insider stuff. And a lot of books have been written about the Rays, about the players, about Madden. Tom Flores wrote one. But this was the only player personnel book that we did. And, I had, again, as you can see in the bio, I had a very close relationship with him. And Bruce Kebrick, it was about 10 years older than me, and he started with Sid Gilman, and we had a chapter in there by a guy named Joe Madro, who was just a wonderful guy, and he kind of a great offensive line coach. He presented Ron Mix to the Hall of Fame. He presented Sid Gilman to the Hall of Fame, and I talked in the book about how he actually got Al's job. His job was San Diego when Sid Gilman was kind of a little reluctant because, Al had coached at the Citadel and got them on suspension with recruiting. He went to USC, got them on suspension. But Joe had met him at USC and really respected him and said, this guy's going to be great. And he kept Joe there for his whole life. And when Bruce worked with him in Houston, Bruce took him under his wing. And when I came out, Joe Madro and his wife kind of adopted me because my family was back in New York. So we had a whole chapter on Joe, and well deserved. One of those guys that really deserves recognition and shouldn't be forgotten. So there you go.
Wait, I'm trying to do this. Okay, so being I had a question. So being one of the scouts, and I know with Al Davis, he liked to bring in guys that were, they say, castaways and guys who other organizations felt like they got nothing left in the tank. So, but they came to the Raiders, they revived their career, but you also had a lot of these guys were also characters in themselves. And Al Davis, he said, no, just, be who you are. I just want you to win. But how did Al Davis take, or I guess, when you see these characters like a Ted Hendricks and a Matuzak, and then later on like an Alzado, and these type of type of characters within themselves, how did Al Davis embrace these players when they come to the Raiders?
Well, first we had a very veteran team, which was great. That really helps a lot. And basically, he gave them their space. He let them be who they were, and they didn't have to, didn't have to dress up and on the plane and wear shirts and ties and such. And gave them a lot of room and allowed them to be themselves. And if they were a little goofy, they were a little goofy. I mean, my was it my second year? I was at training camp, and it was starting to be new to me, and it was an adjustment for me. And like the first day of that camp, I was still learning what to do, what not to do, and I'm there by the gate, and I looked over, and this completely naked woman walks onto the field, and I'm like. And I want to, oh my God, what should I do? Something. So I kind of turned my back to her to pretend I didn't know she was there. And she made a complete lap around the field. And it turned out it was Teddy Hendricks that had hired her to do that. And Tom was the coach. Okay, let's start practice. Nobody had any problems with doing things like that. It was pretty cool. And Teddy Hendricks was wonderful. He got there before I was, and he was there after. And I was there for a lot of his career. And I remember the video they show him on the sidelines putting a pumpkin on his head on the field, and such. And people like that, but he was, there's just so many, and he loved doing that. Being a John Matuzak who came in, and John wasn't great, but he was very good. He was a good complementary guy. He was very athletic, and they didn't double team him, and he got to be very productive in his own way. And Billy Cannon, and the other thing you're talking about bringing guys, he loved to move guys to different positions. Lester Hayes was a linebacker, and we made him a cornerback. And Kent McLuhan, going way back when, while I'm a safety, and he walked out there now says, no, go over to corner. And Kent Kent was a great scout. And he was really a good cornerback. And when I was growing up, I'd watched the AFL on TV, before they merged, and the Raiders were on a lot, because they were a good team, and it was always the second game. And I remembered Kurt Gowdy, was a famous announcer, if you recall, but he would always say, and there's Kent McLuhan, the first bump and run corner. So I came, when I came out, I'm hearing, well, it was Willie Brown, it was this guy, it was that guy. So I was just getting to know Ken. I said, Ken, let me ask you a question. He says, I don't want to make you sound old, but I was growing up, I'd watch the AFL games, and whenever you came on, Kurt Gowdy said, there's Kent McLuhan, the first bump and run corner. But when I come out here and I hear this guy, that guy, he says, I was the guy. I was the first. I said, well, why don't you say something? He says, I don't need to say anything because I know I was the first. I said, well, how did you come about with the bump and run? And he says, well, we used to line up 7-8 yards, and it was like 3rd and 5, and the guy runs a quick out, and there's no way I could cover it, and they're screaming at me, how could you, blah, blah. So the next year, I'm going to try this bump and run, and that's how it did. And it's he was the progenitor of it, and not a lot of people know that, and I've always kind of passed it on. But so that's that was just another thing. They allowed guys to try different things, and it wasn't even just not weird guys, but guys who are on the on the outside, like the Alzados and such. But like I'll give you Ethan Horton was a first round running back, first round pick by the Chiefs, a running back, and a big, good looking guy. He was about 6'3" and maybe 235, and he just didn't make it there. But there was something there, and Al made it a point to bring him in, and he brought him in and said, we'd like to make you a tight end. I think that's, and of course, this is Al Davis talking, and you start rattling off the names of the guys. Dave Casper originally was a tackle at Notre Dame. I think just he moved to tight end as a senior. Derek Ramsey was a quarterback at Kentucky. He had a really nice career. So anyway, this is so what happens. So he's excited about doing it. So one day, so Ethan comes in. And our tight end coach was our offensive coordinator, Terry Rubisky, who plays a big part in the book. And he's like my best friend. So he has a team, he's meeting with the offensive staff, and Ethan had come in early and worked out on his own and then left. So later on, Al called Terry up. He says, well, did you work out Ethan today? He said, well, I didn't get to. We had our team meetings, and we had the offensive coaches we were meeting. And by the time I got out, he was gone. What the hell are you doing? My God, this guy can be, we got to work out with him. And he's cursing like hell at Terry. So later that day, he calls Terry and leaves a message to call him, but Terry doesn't call him back. So the next day, he calls Terry. He says, first started, Terry, did you get it? Can I curse a little bit? I don't want to do it.
Oh, yeah. You can't curse on this show. Yeah.
Okay. So he says to Terry, why didn't you call me back? He says, boss, I can only take being motherfucked by you once a day. He's telling me, I said, what did he say? He goes, okay. So that was Terry was really a special. And anyway, he was great. And another, just another story about Terry, which was great, was we had kept trying to draft James Jett. He was, and it wasn't just because of his speed. I mean, we loved the guy. And Angelo Coya was our scout, and he really kept pushing for him. Now we had signed a free agent, but he went to from the Broncos, and we had a lot of speed, terrible hands, and so we kept trying to draft James Jett, but Al didn't want to have somebody to compete with this guy. So anyway, Jett was missing a ligament, but our trainers passed him, and a lot of teams didn't pass him. So this is Al too. He was very, you didn't want you to spend a lot of money on bonuses. So we were going to sign James for like a $5,000 or $6,000 bonus, which was okay money back then. And so Bruce Kebrick was handling the negotiation, and Bruce Allen, ironically, was James Jett's agent. So Al walked by Bruce and said, well, who are you working to? I'm talking to Bruce Allen. We're trying to sign James Jett. Well, how much are we offering? Well, $6,000. And, he doesn't want much more than that. So he said, let me talk to him. Hey, Bruce, we'll give him 10,000. And Bruce said, sure. Now, if we had done that, he'd what the heck? So anyway, the point is James Jett comes into camp, and he runs like in the 4.3s. I mean, he was an Olympic sprinter, and he has a great. And Angie really liked him as a player, and he had a great camp. He caught the ball well, and caught punts. I mean, we're really excited. So after the mini camps, I would have personnel meetings with the scouts and the coaches. So he's and Jett was great. He was the star of the camp. So he said to I think it was Freddie was the receiver coach. And he says, well, where would you take him now, Fred, after, seeing what he did? Fred says, well, boy, I know I'd take him like the third round. And then we had Tom Walsh. It was kind of the court. It was doing whatever he was doing. And he said, what about you? Well, maybe the first round. With spoiled like that, oh, my God, where you can find it? And he goes to Terry. He says, well, Terry, where would you draft him? Terry says, well, I wouldn't draft him. You wouldn't draft him? Why not? He says, why would I draft a guy I could sign as a free agent? And, Al could have, he goes, let's go to the defense. I mean, Terry was just the greatest, but that was just, fun stuff. And, talking about, what I did was the draft. Obviously that was the main stuff. And, the draft should be, and is probably every other team, the most positive, upbeat, optimistic day of your whole season. And if it didn't work out for Al, he was just miserable. We should have done. He's going. It was just, and he walked out of the room, and someone said, I think there are happier people in Bosnia that are in this room right now. And and sometimes he was right. And when we took Sebastian in the first round. I actually supported that a great deal. We had gone, we had Jeff Jager had been a very good kicker, and he got hurt, and we brought in a guy named Cole Ford who stepped in and hit like 9 of 10 field goals. Yeah, but there was really no pressure on him, and he did fine. But Al said, "Oh, you know what? I don't have to pay him as much." So we cut Jeff, which was a mistake. I mean, once you got an established kicker, you want to have the guy. But he left, and he ended up going to Chicago, and ironically kicked the winning field goal to beat us. And then Cole Ford, he had the first year was fine. The second year was terrible. So this was kind of an odd story. So I'm going to training camp, and Bruce Allen was working on a contract, and he gave me an envelope. He said, when you get up there, Cole Ford's going to be up there. And I've got 2 contracts in there. One is like a 3-year contract, and it's got a $250,000 signing bonus. And the other one is just a one contract minimum wage with no bonus. So I said, well, is he crazy? I mean, you got to think, well, you're not there to negotiate for him. Give him one or the other. So I go up to camp, and I see Cole. I said, well, Cole, okay, I was told, you're going to sign one of these contracts. Which one? Well, I haven't decided yet. I said, Cole, I'm not telling you what to do. It's your choice. But to be honest, you're not allowed to be here unless you have a contract. Now, I mean, you don't have to leave now, but get a room here, call up your agent, and, make the decision. And, by 5 o'clock, we need to know. But if you don't know by then, well, you have to leave until you figure it out. Well, anyway, crazy enough, he picked the no bonus contract, and he had just an awful year, and they cut him in the middle of the season. But anyway, we had him, and we just had a bunch of bad kickers. And so I remember Sebastian came out, and he was great in college. And I remember talking to Kent McLuhan. This is before we had our meetings and such. And I said to Kent, Kent, if we could draft a guy that if he was on our team last year, we would have won 4 more games, would you draft the guy? And he says, is that a trick question? I said, yeah, in a sense it is. But just, what do you, and he says, well, I guess you'd have to. I said, well, there's a kicker out there, if he was on our team last year, we'd have won 4 more games. And it was Sebastian. And he came in, and it took him a year or two to really adjust. And he became a very fine kicker. I mean, just explosive leg and all that. And it's ironically, it was the same year we drafted Shane Leckler. I mean, who's I got a feeling at some point he'd be the next punter in the Hall of Fame. So that was a great year. And we had a new special teams coach named Bob Casulo, and we just kind of laughed about it. The guy who was there before him, had not very good play. And here I told him, Bob, here you are. We gave you a first round kicker, a 4th round kicker, and those guys were great. So those really made a difference. And we had a Gruden coming in, really, it was great. It was great. Thank you. Nice timing, but we had a bad run, at the end of Art was bad. And that then we brought Mike White was the coach, and he just wasn't very good. And then we had Joe Bugle, who I think was the right man at the wrong time. That year that he coached, nobody could have coached that team. It was just,
Jeff George.
No, that was actually before. Who's the D lineman from Clemson? The big, great tackle. And he left us and bopped around. Really was
that McLaughlin?
Chester McLaughlin.
Yeah.
And when Chester got there, Howie Long was still there, and Howie took him under his wing, and Chester was living at his house, and boy, he just played his ass off. And when he wanted to play, he was as good a tackle as anyone in this whole friggin' league. And we had a great coach then, Earl Leggett. And then when Howie left, Chester kind of went into his own little world and practiced when he wanted to, and Earl Leggett had left, and you just couldn't count on him. But he was so talented. I should have put this. We should have had a little chapter about Chester in there, as how players have kind of evolved. But we're playing Chicago, and it's late in the game. We're in Chicago, and we're up by 2 points. And maybe there's like a minute and a half to go in the game, and they're on like our 3-yard line going in. They run a couple of plays and they stop. So now it's 3rd down, and Neil Anderson breaks to the outside, and there's nobody out there. I said, oh my God, and Chester at 330 pounds takes off, and he horse collars him, which was legal then. And it's unbelievable how he did that. And then Bob Thomas is the field goal, the extra point, he shanks it. And we win the game. So, I happened to be near the locker room, and Al had walked by, and he says, come on, stay here with me. And Chester comes in later, and because he was doing interviews, and he calls over and says, Chester, come here, young man. He says, Chester, that play at the goal line was one of the great plays I've ever seen in my life. Now, you talk about a compliment from somebody like that. And Chester goes, okay. And he walks into the locker room. And I think it shook Al a little bit, but I think that was kind of a sign that the players' mentality changed from way back when. But, And Chester was a good guy. He wasn't evil by any means, but he was a coach killer. When he wanted to play. So ironically, when we traded him to Kansas City, and you won't remember this, but we traded him for a second round pick, and we drafted a kid out of Washington State, big, good off defensive lineman. And before training camp, he had a seizure and hit his head and died, which was
Leon Bender.
Leon Bender.
Yeah.
And be honest, just the first thing I checked was on our reports that he had epilepsy. So we didn't want to. How come you didn't say we had it? And everyone, it just happens. But anyway, Chester went to Kansas City, and their record was worse than it was when he got there. And when he left, he went to the Jets, and the Jets' record was worse than when he got there, and it got better when he left. And I think the last one was Denver, and the same thing happened. So Chester, and this again wasn't in the book. It was a pretty cool story. So he was your classic coach killer. So now Bruce Kebrick was at the University of Tennessee, and he's scouting, and this guy comes in, not a good-looking guy, whatever, and he doesn't really recognize him, and he starts talking to him, like he knows him, so you kind of, because Bruce went to Tennessee, so he saw it was Chester McLaughlin. He'd lost like 100 pounds, and he became a coach. He asked, so Bruce said, well, who was that? You should know him. That's Chester McLaughlin. And he looked great. And so he had gone to Stanford, and I was scouting at Stanford, and I saw him, and I talked to him. Hey, great to see you. I said, Chester, I'm really glad you're in coaching, but do you see the irony of you being a coach? In that, let's face it, you aren't the easiest guy to coach. And he says, yeah, you're right. I can't argue the point. And David Shaw was the head coach who had coached with us, and his dad, Willie Shaw, was the coordinator. In fact, David just got hired to work in player personnel with the Broncos, and good guy. And he did a great job at Stanford. So I was talking to him. I said, how's Chester doing? He said, he's been great. The players love him. He's teaching them a lot. And he was the assistant D-line coach. And he says, I have a great D-line coach, and I'm not going to fire him. And so Chester's assistant. But if this guy left, I wouldn't hesitate to make him the line coach. And just tragically, really sadly, he wasn't very old, but he just one day he didn't wake up. And I don't know what the diagnosis was, but that was really sad. That I really felt bad about that. Particularly how he had come along, so well. But that was my Chester. So he was just great. So that was.
Well, you talked about. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I wasn't going to say, but I just thought about something when. He was great, and early, when he came out of college, there was a coach at. We used to send reports to college coaches that he coached against. So I sent a bunch of old linemen around the ACC, and the coach. I still remember the North Carolina State coach wrote a report. He said, "This guy is the most talented defensive lineman I've ever seen, but if you want to take a lot of pride in your organization, I wouldn't touch him." And in some ways, he was right, but he was right actually on both counts. But Chester wasn't quite that bad. Although at the end, he's walking out on the field with a raincoat and such. And but he was great. And so that was Chester. And sorry that Howie left, because Howie, he was like a big brother to him, and he played hard not just for the team but for Howie. So that was pretty cool. Good guy.
That kind of sounds like Max Crosby and Tyree Wilson right there.
Yeah, well, pretty much. I haven't heard anything particularly bad about Tyree, or if he's going through the motions or such. But that guy has stepped in, and he's become, in a great line of defensive linemen. With Howie and Lyle. Going back, going back to the beginning. We've always had a lot of great defensive linemen. And, even the guys that you wouldn't call great, but really Billy Pickell, wonderful. This is just a story. I don't think this was in the book either, but Bill Pickell, had a great junior year. His best game was against Penn State. He was a big guy. And there was a guy that kept calling me. There was a friend of his back in Queens, New York. You got to draft Bill Pickell. You got to draft Bill Pickell. A nice guy. I know he's done great. But Bill had hurt his back, and he only played a couple of games as a senior. So the key was to get this film. So I called Rutgers and said, look, we need this film from Penn State the junior year. Would you send it? He says, sure, we will. And it was my fault. I forgot to double check. So now it's like a day, 2 days before the draft. Where's the film? Oh, I'll look at it. So I call this guy. His name was Joe Capobianco, was Bill's friend. And I said, look, you call Bill and you tell him to get the film. And there was no FedEx back then. You tell him to send it counter to counter, that Penn State film. And if we don't get it, we're not going to draft them, and it'll be your fault. So he calls up Bill, and he goes in there, and Bill says, "Look, I need that film." It's too late. Give me that film, or I'll kill you. So he gets the film, and Bill's dad was a policeman, New York City policeman, and Bill drove, and it was like they met at the corner. It was like a drug drop. He dropped it off to his dad with this guy Capo. They ran to the airport, got it counter to counter, and he looked great, and we drafted him. And he had a wonderful career, and just a good guy. And ironically, I'm still very good friends with this Joe Capobianco, and we still laugh about that story. But the little things like that. Now, maybe the worst thing that I almost went through, I sort of went through, was actually in 1983. I'm sort of still, so Ron says, look, we're looking about these guys in the first round. Why don't you give them all a call and see how they're doing, any problems or whatever. So, and make sure we know where they're going to be at. So I call these guys, everything's good. I call this guy, and they, yeah, okay. Oh, I'm looking forward to it. I'll be at this number. And I call Don Mosbar. Well, Don, how you doing? And he's not even going to say that. I said, you excited about the draft? Yeah, we love I'll be here. That'll be great. So we draft them, and it was like the 31st, the 30th, the 31st pick. And it came down to between him and Darryl Green. And we loved Darryl Green. I mean, he was just explosive, and this is before a combine and such. And it was a great cornerback. And it came down to those two, and we took Don Mosbar. And ironically, on Darryl Green, Al always said, if we had drafted him, I was going to make him a receiver, because he kept looking for another Cliff Branch. He says, yeah, sorry, what a dumb bastard I am. He could kind of laugh about stuff like that. But anyway, the next day, Ron gets a call from a guy with the LA Times, and I walk in, and he's like pale. I said, are you all right? He says, I got a call from this guy. It turns out that Don Mosbar had back surgery about 3 weeks ago. Oh my God. And what really upset me about Don was when, they talked about it. I said, well, if the guy who had called me had asked me how I was doing, I would have told him, well, I had back surgery, which is crap, and God bless Ron, because everybody bugged him to ask him who was the guy that called Mosbar, and he would, no, I'm not going to say, whatever. And ironically, he turned out to be a really good player. And he was a tackle, he was a guard, and we made him a center. And gosh, he was playing really well. And we were scrimmaging the Cowboys, and somebody poked him in the eye, and he lost vision in that eye, and he retired, had to quit. I don't know if you remember that, but that was, and I ran into a couple of times, and he had a good, he was a good pick, and but he, as I understand, he's doing really well. I haven't seen him in a number of years, but I remember at a restaurant I was eating, and he and his wife were there, and I went over to say hello. But that was, again, I don't think we really got into that, but that was, the Darryl Green thing was the one we always kind of.
The Mosbar story was in your book. The Mosbar story was in your book.
Yeah,
that was in the book. Now, I did have a question. Being Al Davis, being a head coach ahead of time, and going into everything, and being so hands-on like he was, what was it like being in the draft room with him all the time, every year, when you had a owner that was so dead set on players at times, and you guys did all your work, and just overall, what was it like to be, in the draft room with him?
No, he was very, look, he knew his football, and he was really, it was 24/7 with him, and I'd get calls, at 1 a.m, and I finally figured out to keep, when I wouldn't go out Monday because I'd have to watch film and he'd want to talk about that. I'd leave Monday night. I'd see his school Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, but I'd get back Thursday night because I'd have to catch up on things on Friday. Maybe the team was leaving. So I learned I would, at input and everything. Excel documents were great. And I had everybody's names and their heights and weights and speeds and who was the fastest and who had the stats. And so if he called me, I'd have those sheets at home. And so I kind of impressed him. Whereas Ron Wolf had a photographic memory. He thought I was pretty good, and I was pretty good, but I always had that stuff on hand. And he had just like his memory, he'd show it off. And the guys that in the scouting department, Bruce and I were the only two that didn't play for the team. Kent McLuhan, Danny Connors, Angelo Coya played for Al at the Citadel and USC, and Calvin Branch played for the team and such. And so Bruce Allen once said, our scouts would come in December, and we would meet for like a week, and then we would come in about 8 days before the draft. Not before the draft. We'd come in 8 days before, 2 weeks before the draft, and the scouts, would put the whole draft together. We could hold the draft the next day. We broke it down everywhere, and we turned it into Al, and then we would meet with the coaches for 2 weeks. And whereas we had Brett Favre as the sixth player in the draft and Todd Marinovich in the second round, suddenly Marinovich is still there with Favre, and of course we take Todd, which was just not great. But he could, and he loved it, and Bruce Allen once said, I wish you guys were here all the time, because when the scouts are in town, Al was happy. He'd walk in our room, and even Angie Coy and Kent McLuhan, Al said, then once they were walking away, he said, those are the two fastest guys you might ever see. And Angie Coy was up played for the Bears, and he was a great sprinter. And he was going to try out for the Olympics. And before he signed with the Bears, he said to George Halas, I really want to be able to have time off to play, go out for the Olympics. And he had signed his contract, and says, all right, well, I'm going to go. And Halas goes, you're not going anywhere. Get back in there. That's how Halas was. But Al told a funny story. He was at when he was at the Citadel, Angie's back there returning a kickoff, and the team is down by 5 points with like 30 seconds to go, and they kick it to Angie, and Al's telling the story. And those dumb bastards kick it to Angie. He returns it for a touchdown, but there's a holding penalty, and they kick it to him again, but he doesn't make it. But so after Al left, he tells Angie, "I want you to come with us to USC. Come with me to USC." And the Citadel wasn't the nicest place, with the military. So he went there, and Al, the loyalty like that, Al never forgot. And Angie, I think had been a horse trainer, and was looking to do scout. And he came in, and it was great. He really was a good scout. And here's just I got to be very good friends with Angie. I mean, I love these guys. They were all great guys. And so he says, did you ever watch the Godfather movie when Michael goes down to see the guy in Florida, and he walks in, the guy's watching a football game, and it was, he said, it's the Notre Dame USC game that year. He says, I played in that game. He would, little things like that was just so much fun with these guys. Now, again, all the scouts were good. Mickey Marvin, just to not be always positive, was terrible. He was just a good guy, good player, and he got hired. And I remember Ron, we interviewed him, and he started working. And after like 2 months, Ron said, I said, this guy can't scout. It's just a mistake. We should get rid of him right now. But, he was very loyal to Mickey, and Mickey always spoke highly, but was a terrible scout. And I'll explain why I'm going to be so critical about him if I could. But, he was a scared scout. In all the years he was there, he never once recommended a player on his own. He always had to, I saw him with Kent, and I saw him with Bruce, and I saw him, but he would never speak up for himself. And just an example how bad he was, Bruce, Kebrick used to watch a lot of film in the spring, and Mickey would call him, if you saw him, he said, well, I got this quarterback at Valdosta State. I only saw one game, but boy, he looked like a great player. And, I could see him be on a high pick. So we come into our meetings, and Bruce has given him a free agent grade, and Mickey gave him a first round grade. Well, it's obvious he thought Bruce was going to give him that higher grade. And, well, go ahead, Mickey, tell us why you think he's such a high pick. He can't even read his report. but Bruce, you liked him, in the spring. He says, yeah, but I watched a lot of film in the fall, and I see what he is. He can't even read the report. And then another time, just to give an example, he called up. He saw a guy at Tulane. I remember his name, Bernard Robertson, and he was a defensive. He was an offensive tackle, was 6'2", 280, and he liked. I'm going to give this guy a second round grade. And I'd like, could you come in and watch film on him? Which is the thing to do. You give him a high grade, you want a second pick. Well, Bruce said, well, I'll try and get in there if I can, but don't count on it. So Bruce told me that. It turns out we were playing the Saints, and Tulane had a home game that Saturday night, and Tulane. And so I said, I'll watch him, and then I'll get film, watch him, and blah, blah, blah. And I watched the guy, and I liked him. Again, he wasn't tall enough to be a tackle for Al, but I said he could be a guard or a center, and I gave him a third round grade. So we come into our meetings, and Mickey, gave him a seventh round grade. I said, gee, I thought you liked this guy, Mickey. And he says, well, you gave him a third round grade, and why don't you go first, even though, the area guy goes first. So all right, this is what I like about him. This is what I didn't like about him. I project him, I'm shortening it, but, I project him as a guard or center, and I think he has the tools to be a pretty good player. And I think we should take him there. So Mickey, instead of reading, I agree with everything you said, give me a third round grade. So now, the reason I'm being so hard on Mickey is because we had to cover for him a lot. We had to, go to a lot more places that he was going to, and it just was a lot of work. And how goofy he was 3 years behind turning in his expenses. Now, as a scout, that's a lot of money. Your per diem, your hotels, your rentals, all this. Not that I particularly cared about it, but the accountants would always come to me, get him to turn his expenses in. I said, we tell him we're trying to it. Just make a policy. If you don't turn them in a month, we won't honor it. But he said Al wouldn't do that. So he finally turned them in, whatever. So Bruce and I get let go, and they keep Mickey. Which is like keeping Ted Baxter on the Mary Tyler Moore show and firing everybody else to kind of show my little. So what happened? So here's what really upset me. So again, my best friend's Terry Rubisky, and Mickey's and Terry's son is at the All-Star game, and hey Mickey, my dad wants to say hello, and and he said, well, how is it, man? Oh, it's so much better without John and Bruce. Nobody is checking up on me, and it's just so much better. I didn't like it when they were there. So of course Terry's my best friend, and he tells me this. I said I wasn't very happy about it. So that's why I really had no feeling for Mickey. And now, sadly, and I certainly feel bad, he came down with ALS. It was just a terrible disease, and passed away. But so that's my only negative stuff. And obviously I'm not going to put that in the book, but I'm just passing one on to you guys, which is sort of what went on there and such. And there you go. That's I can go longer if you want. I'm fine. I'm enjoying it. If you're fine with this, or if you got other people planned. Any other ask questions that I may not have. Obviously I haven't covered a lot. There's so much that you guys can do or ask about.
Well, we know, of course, Al Davis. He had success with John Madden, and then right after that, he had success with Tom Flores. John Madden having won Super Bowl 11, Tom Flores 15-18. And then after that, it was just kind of like an up and down with the coaches. And I know he regretted firing out Art Shell the first time around, but with coaches, let's say like Mike Shanahan and Lane Kiffin, being Al Davis, and you're talking about in the scouting room, Al Davis being the general manager, and basically it's Al Davis's team since he started coaching in 1963. How were these type of coaches like Shanahan, like Lane Kiffin, and even to an extent like John Gruden, how did they, I guess, when it comes to drafting players or in the draft room, or basically their philosophies with Al Davis, were they? I guess what I'm trying to say is,
no, I know exactly what you're saying here.
Yeah.
Now we'll start with Shanahan, and we had the very similar offense for all those years, and the playbook was the same, and Mike, Al wanted someone to come in and input the West Coast offense because he knew a lot of stuff, but that really wasn't his forte. The problem, as it turned out, was he only allowed Mike to bring in 3 coaches, and we had a bunch of other coaches, that had one way of doing things, and Mike came in and changed everything, and he changed the playbook, which needed to be modernized in a sense. Because I remember talking to Larry Kennan when he came in, who was our quarterback coach, and he said, this system makes no sense, but they had used it all the time, and everybody memorized it and learned it. And so Mike brought in a new playbook, and I remember Tom saying, I always wanted to do that, but we couldn't do it because he wasn't going to change. And the problem, and what was a real big difference for the players, it was very different the way Mike wanted to do it, where they'd run out and they'd run a play. And normally the coaches would go out, you did this wrong, this wrong. And they said, no, we're going to coach in the room. And they instead of running 40 plays, we'd run 80 plays and run back, run another play. And, everything was on film, and they did it that way. And that was an adjustment for everybody. And people weren't crazy about it. And then little things, you can't sit on your helmet, which people like to do and such. And the players weren't having fun, and the coaches, weren't doing well either. And Al wasn't happy with the way things were done, and he let him go. But and he talked to me and said, well, what'd you think about this? What'd you think of Mike? I said, well, I think he's really a good coach, but it wasn't going to work around here. And he knew exactly what I said. He said, because of the coaches. I said, yeah, you got coaches there that don't want to see you win. I mean, how can you, survive like that? So, Art came in, and he was like, he really came in, brought everything back, and everything went back. And we had a veteran team, the Matt Millens, the Howie Longs, and those guys, and they responded to it. We had a great run. And, and then we brought in Bo, and we were having and Terry Rubisky was the coordinator, and things were going really well. And but then we had a couple of years, and Al just wasn't happy with the way things were going. And Mike White came in, and Mike, here's another story. I don't think he's doing that well anyway. I saw him years ago, and he wasn't sure who I was. But it was surprising because when Mike got hired, if you remember, he was like the quarterback guru. He got him at Cal, got him at Indiana, in the University of Illinois. I always had great quarterbacks. So he comes in as our quarterback coach, and during we'd send the coaches out to see players at their workouts. So I gave him an assignment of players, and he came into my room and he says, "Okay, now what do you want me to do? About what? About scouting? Oh, we'll call the travel agent. You can stay at these hotels, and here's the schedule, and you're going to go watch them work. No, I mean, what do you want me to do on the workout?" I said, "Mike, haven't you ever worked out, guys?" And I can see, "Oh yeah, I've done it, but how would you do it?" I'm thinking, "Oh my God." Anyway, so that I was really disillusioned, and he wasn't a very good coach. He lasted 2 years, and then, like I said, Bugle came in, and I thought, he just couldn't do. And now it came down to Gruden and Belichick. He was interviewing Belichick, and I knew he wasn't going to hire Belichick for the reason. Again, I put in the book about when Darryl Stingley got hurt. That was actually my first, I think it was like the second game I was with the Raiders, a preseason game. And it was, terrible with the paralysis. And so Al calls me into his office and said, "Do you know George Allen?" I said, "Well, not personally." "Well, of course you don't know him, but look, here's the keys to my car. Please pick him up at the airport and take him down to see Darryl Stingley." I said, "Fine." So I take him down there, and God, I was sitting there with Darryl's mother, and she started talking about him, and I was crying. It just was just an amazing woman and such. So anyway, they're all done, and George Allen was great. So I'm taking him back, and he says, "Come on, let me buy you some ice cream," at the airport. And back then, security wasn't, and everybody knew Al's car. So I just parked it there at the curb, and we went in, we had ice cream, and he started telling me about, when I would coach against the Broncos or the Chargers or the Chiefs, this is what I would do, blah, 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 blah. And I'm thinking, well, that's very nice. He's telling. So then he calls up Al, "Would you get Al? I want to thank him." And he calls him up. And again, I'm like 25 years old back when. And he says, "Oh, I just want to thank you. This young man was great, but I just want you to know how I would defense these teams." And, and I could hear Al kind of cut him off. And so later on, so I dropped him off. Really nice. And so I was driving Al somewhere, and John had already retired, and Tom had not been hired yet. In fact, the only one I think we interviewed was Ray Perkins and Tom. But so I'm driving out somewhere. Says, "Well, guess who wants to be my head coach?" I said, "George Allen." "How'd you know that?" And I told him the story. I think little things like that, he kind of got a kick. But anyway, so it comes down to Gruden, and I really think, when he saw John Gruden, he didn't see the John Gruden who John Gruden was. He saw a young kid that's going to listen to everything I said. And, the first practice, John Gruden is John Gruden. He's smacking guys with the pads and he's running around, and all this is just, it was just so different. And the players are kind of shook about all this. And so he comes in off of practice and he's walking up the stairs. I say, "Hey, coach, that was just a great practice." And he says, "John, I'm going to make these players hate my fucking guts." I said, "Wow, we got a new sheriff in town here." And then, Larry Brown, was a free agent that really didn't work well at all. And he walked into Gruden's office. And again, he thinks he's just some kid. And he says, "Look, I don't like the way I'm being treated. Okay, this is how I'm going to practice. This is how I'm going to play. And that's how it's going to be done. You got that?" And he says, yeah, I got it. Thanks a lot." And he walks out, and John called his assistant in, a guy named Mark Ortega. He said, "John, call our travel agent, get this guy a ticket, and get him the hell out of here." And and he was talking to Bruce Kebrick, and he said to Bruce, "Oh my God, Bruce, I think I'm going to get fired." He says, "What'd you do?" He told him what he did. He said, "That's great." He said, "He's not going to fire you." And it really sent the message, what around the league or the team, we got a new sheriff in town here. And again, you talk about Al's knowledge, which was great. And John was amazing. And like, I used to sit in a training camp on the coaches meetings, and there was actually personnel meetings that he carried over coaches meetings. And when I was with some of the earlier coaches, we talked about, have we thought about doing this? And they'd write it down. "Oh yeah, we'll look at it. And what about this? Oh, we'll do this." And every time he brought up something, when John was in that meeting, "Have you thought about using this kind of defense? Well, we just input it the other day. We're going to try it tomorrow. And what about this guy? Blah, 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 doing this. Yeah, we tried. Remember, we tried it last week and it didn't work. And what about?" And John pretty much, he answered everything, and very respectfully and all. But he knew as much as Al, and maybe in some ways a little bit more, because he'd been in a lot of different organizations. But I mean, it was just wonderful to watch the two of them go back and forth. Now, the one thing John wasn't good at was personnel, but he worked out just as hard in scouting as he did in coaching. And he really, and we had to kind of tone him down because he wasn't very good. Now we had a guy when Sebastian was coming out. He wanted a guy named Sylvester Moore, who was he was always offensive oriented. He wanted Sylvester Moore. He went to Tennessee State, but obviously it wasn't like Al was by himself. And we went and we took Sebastian, and Sylvester went to the Chiefs like a couple of picks later. And was a talented guy, but he blew his knee out and never did much. But John just wasn't a good personnel guy, and we just certainly listened to him, but we did what we thought was right, particularly with Al. And ironically, he goes to. I remember talking to him, and there was a guy, Bobby Ross, was the head coach of San Diego, and he got named the general manager along with being the head coach. And I was talking to John. He brought said, "I see this Bobby Ross. I would never want to be the GM and head coach. That's too much work." And he goes to Tampa and he becomes sort of the GM, and he's terrible, as just a coach. They win the Super Bowl, and he was terrible. And he gets they let him go. And when he came to the Raiders, I said, "Well, that's great. He's a great coach, but he's like the general manager. Even though he hires Mayock, he's making all the decisions." and they were a lot of them were terrible, except obviously that D lineman, your Central Michigan guy. They hit on him, and they were not very good. But so since they've gone, I think they're going to do a little bit better. But that was John, and then the whole fiasco of not when Al calls me, we talked about it. Would you take a 1, a 2, and a 3 for John? And I couldn't believe it. Of course not. We just you finally got the right head coach, and and well, you only be for a year. Let's do the year because we're going to the Super Bowl. My son turned my lights off. He's kind of a special needs guy. That's but so anyway, he's finally would you take 3 1s? Well, I'd think about it, but in retrospect, I really should have fought like hell and talked about. I talked about in the book, after that Bugle year, he asked me, really what I thought about the season. And then I said, you want my honest opinion? He says, yeah. And I said, this is an embarrassment. I'm embarrassed to walk into the game. I see these fans. We got these great fans. And that last game, I hate to say it, I knew we were going to lose. I said, this is the first time. I always said there's a way we can, win some way or other. And Al said, I'm going to turn this thing around. And that's when Gruden came in. And I'm only sorry that I didn't bring back that story to him. I said, you got things right. You were executive of the year. You got the right coach. We got the right players. Coaches want to be here, play. And it just, we had a good carryover that first year, with Bill Callahan. But, after that year, somehow the players saw that Al didn't support him. And then from Callahan, Norv Turner, was a good coach. But again, Al didn't really back him to the hilt, and the players could read that. And, and Norv went down to San Diego and did a really good job. And then after that, Art came in, and I think it was Art. And I'll be honest, I didn't think hiring Art was going to be a good idea. And he says, "What do you really have against?" I said, "I don't think he really enjoys scouting. Like some guy like Gruden all the time, Tom all the time, Madden loved it." He says, well, like one time, he said, I'll tell you, Lincoln Kennedy was coming out. And I said to Art, there's one guy I'd like you to go see. And that's Lincoln Kennedy, because we feel there's a real chance he's going to be there when we pick. And we think he can come in and be a really good player. And he gives me the date. I give him the date. He looks, oh, no, I can't be there then. I said, well, are you scouting someone? No, I'm taking that week off. I'm going to Reno. I said, this is pretty important. I think it'd be important for you to change it. He says, no, get out of my office. What the heck? I never forget. It really bothered me a lot. And he said, well, I can, and I gave some other examples. He says, well, I can see your point, but I may have to hire him anyway. All right. So anyway, it was a terrible year. And ironically, the only 2 teams we beat were the 2 teams in the Super Bowl, Arizona and Pittsburgh. But, and then they made the change and such. But, just, little things, just jumping into the draft room. I think we told, I think about the Charles Woodson. Al liked the idea of sort of being smarter than everybody. And Charles Woodson, was great. There was no question. He's the guy. And we were going to take him. We had the 4th pick. And, it was Manning went and Ryan Leaf. And we had 2 guys we were going to be very happy with. A defensive end from Florida State, whose name you can look it up, and Woodson. And the Cardinals really played the Chargers. Oh, we really like Ryan Leaf. We'll take one of those guys, which they weren't going to do. And the Chargers made a big trade, gave them extra picks. Now we're there, and most people know we want Woodson. And the Cardinals going, oh, we love Woodson. Oh boy, but they didn't need a cornerback. And I know who it was. It was a guy named Andre Wadsworth. Andre Wadsworth was really a good defensive end at Florida State. And so I think someone could look. You want Wadsworth? We'll take Woodson. You take Woodson? We'll take Wadsworth. And they took Wadsworth, and we got. So now Al wants to trade down to get 2 first-round picks, and there was a safety from Syracuse. And Trey Thomas was a tackle, and with the good thing, the room stayed strong. If there was like one guy that broke down, he would. But we weren't breaking down. The coaches were strong. Kenny Hirok was in charge of player personnel then, and Al gets so he storms out of the room. So now it's our turn to pick, and Al Locus, I was on the phone, and so Hirok went down to Al. He says, "Well, it's our turn to pick." He says, "Take who you want to take." Well, of course, we wanted Woodson, and and he was great. Although the funny thing, we come to the first mini camp, and Woodson, is out there, and the first guy he goes one-on-one against is James Jett. Now he hasn't seen speed like that. Now Charles can run, and he blows by him. He just absolutely caught him off guard. And I knew it. And but Woodson obviously turned out to be a great player. And then another player, ironically, who was our middle linebacker? He went to
Greg Beaker.
No, that was like no. This was later on. He went to San Diego State, and he went to Bishop O'Dowd High School.
That was
Thank you.
He's in the media too. I always forget it. Morrison, Kurt Morrison.
Yeah, Kirk Morrison. So we really like Kirk Morrison. The problem with Kirk, he had run like a 4.85, and it just wasn't a good time. Now, to be honest, we changed his time. It's the only time we ever gave a dishonest time. So we put him in at like 4.8, and because he played faster than
you guys changed Marcus Allen's time too.
We did that too. I think it was 4.65, or in fact like 4.6. We got him down to 4.6. Thank you. I forgot I put that in the book too. But Marcus again was a guy who could cut without having to gather, and he played so much faster. I mean, God bless Marcus. Great, the greatest. I love Marcus, and I got to know him really well through Rubisky, and I miss seeing guys like that. But anyway, so Kirk, we see film. Al wants to take a kid from Cal Poly who ran like 4.6, but just not as good a player. I mean, it's not even close. And we're going back and forth. And Al was looking, and Rob Ryan and the other guy, who is it with the funny name? The name of the game, anyway, the guy was with the Jets last year, the coordinator, Wink Martindale, Don Martindale. That Wink came from he used to do game shows named Wink Martindale, and so that's how Don Martindale got that nickname from that. But anyway, they loved him. It was all unanimous, and Al he's steaming, and we take him. He kind of concedes, all right, we'll take him. So he's sitting there, and he is just steaming. Well, Mark would come into the draft room for like 5 minutes or so. Well, he comes in at this point, and he says, what about this guy from USC? And Al looks at me because I did SC and I can't remember his name, but I said, well, he's really not very fast. I'm not even connecting the Kirk Morrison thing. And he goes, well, we should take him anyway because this guy can't run. We should get all these guys that can't run. We'll be the slowest team in the league. I said, well, he's kind of short too, But anyway, Kirk, turned out to be a very, very fine player. But Al had to get the final word in. And when we took, God, I used to have these names. Who was the guy from Alabama, the linebacker that
Roland McClain?
Yeah, Roland McClain. And and Bruce, wasn't a big fan. He was because he's not. He said he's going to be Ray. He's going to be like Ray Edwards, and he said he's not. He's not going to be that guy. He's an athletic guy. You got to play him. I was like, can't take on blocks, but he's an athletic guy. But he's not going to be what you want. And in fact, we had a guy from Penn State who had blown his knee out. He said, well, let's we trade down and get this guy. And it turns out the Cowboys took him. And there's one thing Al used to say, don't talk to anyone. Don't talk to anyone. And more often than not, Jerry Jones, would end up doing stuff with us. And in fact, when Al somehow came up with a name, and it was a guy, it was a linebacker from Western Illinois, whoever it was. And Kent McLuhan had done him and given him a late round grade. Well, and so we all looked at film on the guy, and we didn't. And Jerry Jones takes this guy in the third round, and he wasn't a very good player, so we turned out to be right on that one. But anyway, so Kirk's still in his prime, and Al's gonna draft McClain, and to his credit, so we're gonna trade him to Buffalo, and we make the trade. But Al says, get Kirk on the phone, and he called him up, and couldn't have been nicer. Kirk, you are a great player for us, and we think you got it. It really was very magnanimous, and so I kind of like that about Kirk, and I guess he has still a relationship with the team, or did, and whatever. But that was just kind of what went on in the draft room. I mean, it was when he got his guy, he was happy. I mean, the Sam Williams story, I don't want to get into that, and Vance Mueller's story. Ironically, those are guys that I had scouted and didn't particularly like, and I was right. What can I tell you? So.
Well, I don't want to interrupt, but we're going to bring in one more person to add to this interview. We want to introduce from the Raider D podcast, right here, Mr. Wait, I'm going to put it in. Mr. Raider D, right there. He's from the Bay Area, Oakland Raider. He's gone to many games, so he basically. Everything, all the stories you're talking about, I know he knows about it too. So I want to introduce Raider D. Thank you for coming on to the show. Asylum, you wasn't in. Yeah, go.
Oh yeah, goddamn! Now I forgot the damn question I was going to ask. Oh shit! Damn it! Go ahead,
Raider D.
Well,
Raider D.
Raider D.
Tag right in. We're gonna tag you right in.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate being here, guys. Appreciate the interview with Jon. Just been enjoying the whole thing, letting you recount these stories. I think it's very important for the younger generation to hear these stories. It's kind of a lost art form, really. It's just amazing to see how you're able to keep in your mind all of these players' names and when they were drafted and who wasn't drafted. And I'm just sitting here flabbergasted. Like, I hope one day I can have that kind of recount and recall with the Raiders. But I mean, you were inside, right, as a scout and being close to Al. I just think it's great having guys like you come on. And I'm just honored to be here and happy to participate.
Well, I appreciate that. I don't know. Did you have a chance to read the book? And
I haven't yet. I'm going to go and order it after this interview.
But
if you have to, get it on Audible. That way, if you have any time with driving or anything, I'm telling you, the narrator on the book, he did an awesome job in the Al Davis, trying to sound like Al Davis and everything else. He does an awesome job. If you don't have time to read it, get it on Audible and listen to it. Like I said, I do it at least 4 or 5 times a year. When I got breaks in my books waiting for a new book to come out, I listen to it all the time. It is a great listen and a great read.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's funny about the guy, the Audible guy. I don't know how he found out we were doing a book, but he contacted Steve Corcoran and kind of sent samples of what he did, and the guy really did a great job. That was pretty cool.
I have a funny question. Now, anytime you hear an interview about Al Davis, when they say Al Davis was always on the field, you always knew he was on the field because of his cologne. I want to know if you know what was the cologne that Al Davis wore that was so distinctive when he came onto the field. Do you know it? Because I always wanted to ask that question.
You know what? If you ask Bobby Romansky, whose dad was the equipment guy, and he would have to know it because he would have that stuff always on hand, like the hairbrush, and that story's in the book.
The hairbrush story, yeah.
But what it's funny because you could smell it. It didn't smell bad, but it was, you could see, Al's in the office, and there was a guy, Mike Ornstein. Al was out of town, and everyone's kind of relaxed, and Mike Ornstein, as a joke, sprayed it on himself, was walking around, and everyone's, Al's here. that was good. Mike was funny that way. Yeah.
So if I could just ask a question of you, Jon, it would be, me being a Bay Area kid and the Raiders being such a big part of the Bay Area, and then they leave and go to LA and then come back. What's your thoughts on, what was that really all about? And what was kind of the backstory behind that? Because we only hear it from the outside.
Well, the big thing was stadiums, and the Oakland Coliseum, which in his time was a lot of fun, but the thing with the suites and this and that, and and Al didn't want to be left behind, and he talked to the Oakland people, and I guess this is what I'm reading about, because But Pete Rozelle said, you don't have to worry about it. He's not going to get the votes to move, and it became a big court thing, which he won. In fact, when we drafted Marcus Allen, he wasn't in the room. He was down in L.A. On one of those court cases. And I think we talked about that. And in fact, this guy, Jeff Beeran, was one of the lawyers, had worked at USC when Marcus was there. And it came down to Marcus or Walter Abercrombie, who went to Pittsburgh later in the first round. And I remember Al said to him, can Marcus block? He said he's a great blocker. And Marcus did everything great. He could pass, but so when you tell Al he couldn't do something, he went to court and he had great lawyers and he won. So we went down there, and again, there were promises made about this stadium and that stadium, and the Coliseum wasn't coming along, so we're going to go to Irwindale, and that kind of fell through. And then the Coliseum just wasn't doing things. And as I understand it, the limited partners, look, if we'd rather the team be up here, because it's not getting done down in LA. He was even talking about building a stadium in Inglewood, where the Rams are now. And I said, all right, to hell with them. We're moving back. And, it was, we moved down, we moved back. And, my only real regret was I had bought a house in Manhattan Beach for about $315. And I looked at it the other day, it's about $2 million now. A little 1,600. It was Manhattan Beaches, but I live in a really nice area here, and, things worked out in that sense, but I really should have. That's my big regret was, but anyway, but that's pretty much, and Al, you can't do this. I can't do it. Watch me, and I don't know if you were, Baltimore, but when the Browns went to Baltimore, their first call was to Al, and it was a hell of a deal. And he really thought about it, but, he was a West Coast guy at this point.
So there was a chance the Raiders could have ended up out of the state?
Well, I mean, the offer was made, but Al didn't want to do it. Simple as that.
Well, I'm glad he didn't.
Yeah, no, it was West Coast. Yeah. I'd get funny. You said something about, bringing up names and such. In this book, and remembers, and I've been talking to, somebody did something. Oh, I got this book, blah blah blah. John Matuzak, who's that? I was shocked. People didn't, but maybe I should. It's been a long time, and when I told him he was in the movie Goonies, was the big guy.
He was Sloth.
Oh, I know him.
Yeah,
so
he was the Raiders.
I like what you said about this is bringing back memories to this generation that didn't know about it. And I like to think we made it entertaining enough that they'll get a kick out of it. Maybe even, look up stuff on YouTube on these particular players or Wikipedia, things like that.
Yeah, I think one of the issues that I see right now that happens a lot is the introduction of fantasy football has, at first, and I used to play fantasy football and just amongst, my buddies and stuff before it became, like a gambling addiction for people on the internet and everything. And a lot of Raiders fans who are younger that all they do is play fantasy football don't really understand what it means to be a Raiders fan because they don't know any of the history of the Raiders, because they only care about, is my running back going to score so many points? Is my receiver going to score so many points? Is my quarterback? And none of them are Raiders. So they're rooting for other teams. So I just I think it's really important that we're able to tell these stories, and I'm definitely going to have to check out your book now, and I'll definitely be promoting that on my show as well. Everybody needs to go and get it.
No, I appreciate that. That's awfully good of you to say that. But it's and I'd be honest, the stadium in Vegas, and I haven't been to. I drove by it. It's everything I hear. It's just an unbelievable thing, and the sad thing. In fact, there was an article out of I still get the news clips that this company sends to me, and they're talking about the lack of home field advantage that the Raiders don't get anymore, with maybe half the stadium full of the opposing team. When you're seeing so many colors, the Pittsburgh colors, or so many red in the stadium when the 49ers played there and when the Chiefs played there. And, this is a funny story. Not funny. We played in New Orleans, and when Gruden was there, and a ton of Raider fans came, and they put them all in the end zone. And it turns out the Saints were coming out of the end zone they're like on the 1 yard line, and all these fans are screaming loud like it's a Raider game. They had to call timeout because the Raider fans on the road were so loud. And someone told me they fired the ticket manager after that. But you know,
Yeah.
that's I feel that the home field advantage is lost a little bit because of and I ended from reading about it, a lot of films. It's expensive as hell, these tickets. So a lot of them will maybe sell. What is it? 10 game? No, what do you mean 10 games? Maybe it's 9 games where they got within and so they sell 3 of them. And it probably pays what they're getting for it. Pays for the rest of the tickets. That kind of thing. It's, I remember when I first heard about when they first had season tickets out here. I had a friend of mine, he said, and, relatively speaking, it wasn't expensive, but back then, you're paying season ticket. And he says, our family would buy it. And, to buy a ticket at a time, but you sort of wrote the check, put it in the mail, and you forgot about it. And that was one of the problems when you had to keep paying game by game. It's so that was sort of what's one of the things I think they've lost back there. And, hopefully they can find a way to bring it back.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, now I believe it was Sid Gilman who said it when he talked about Al Davis thought about he was the smartest person in the NFL, but he's not yet. Was Al Davis too smart for his own good at times? Did he outsmart himself?
Well, he liked the genius term, and he wasn't a genius, but he was a very intelligent man. And if you work 24/7 on one subject, you're going to be pretty good. So so in that sense, he was really smart. I think the thing that what really made him so successful was this drive and this unwillingness to quit and give up. But those last 10 years, physically, he really stepped down. He had to. He didn't want to use a walker. And, when he fell down, and hurt his head, the doctor, Bob Alwell, said, you got to use the walker. And he did that. And then, when he went to practice, he had to be in a golf cart kind of thing. And he just wasn't, he couldn't, the draft room, again, he'd work his ass off and know them all. And he started to go more hunch-wise. Well, then, normally when I got there, it was really great with the sense that it's the Raiders against the league, and he really got behind everyone. And sort of at the end, it was him, a little bit him in some rounds against the scouting department. Well, we really think we should go with this. I forgot we had a guy who went to Oregon State, and we had him as a 6th round. He was and we ended up drafting him. I think it was the same year we drafted Mike Mitchell, if you want to. But he pulled his muscle. He pulled a muscle, and we were going to project him as defensive end, and he got hurt early. But anyway, the point was, Al says, "What about this guy?" And he said, "Well, in this round, the 4th round," I said, that's really too early for this guy. We got him in the. You really want to push it, maybe the 5th, but we wouldn't take him here." And he said to the linebacker coach, he said, "What do you think?" "Oh, yeah, it's a good spot. This is a good spot." So we take him, and he comes in, and the pick doesn't work out well. And every year after that, someone asked about this player. "Oh, that was that linebacker coach. He talked me into taking him." So when we hired new coaches, I would tell them, look, if you agree with Al, by all means, agree with him. If you don't agree with him, please don't agree with him, because if it doesn't work out, you're going to get the blame like that. And so that was kind of funny stuff in a sense. But for the last few years, it was tough. It was tough. Even in the second day of the draft, we all left after the 1st round. And I guess he froze, and they had to get an ambulance, and he was staying at the airport Hilton, which just closed. It was going to close, which was sad. But and then the second day of the draft, we're waiting for him, and they say we go into the draft room, and we said, I thought I was here, and then he's on the speakerphone, so he worked out of his house as opposed to being in that room. So it was really tough for him and he couldn't concede, and that maybe was one of the problems that. We had a lot of didn't have a lot of success in those last decade.
Yeah.
Well, I was gonna say, they said that after that Super Bowl loss to John Gruden, it was said by Greg Papa that his health took a decline because I don't know if it's because he lost to the coach he just traded away, But Al being a prideful guy that like his own coach that he handpicked beat him in the Super Bowl. They said that, or Greg Papa said that was something that really took a hit in his health. And sorry, go ahead, Raider D.
No, I was just gonna continuing on with that with Gruden. How do you feel about the hit job that the NFL did on Jon Gruden a few years back, and how did you feel about McDaniels becoming head coach and trying to bring that Patriot way to the Raiders?
Well, on that coach change, which I think, and again, I'm not there and I don't talk to people there, but just watching it, when the special teams coach with the B, whatever his name is,
Bisaccia,
he stepped in, and I thought he did a great job, and I think he actually earned the position. But and even the players spoke up to him; they loved this guy. And then again, I'm not there, but I really think Mark, that wasn't a sexy enough pick for Mark to make. And so, he goes to New England and gets this guy. And then the GM would just, I think that's what happened. Now, what happened this year, again, the team's doing badly and they get rid of him. And Graham steps in and he does a nice job, but I think it's a little deceptive. He wins 5 games. 4 of those games, I think, were Denver, San Diego, the Giants, and the Jets were nothing, but the Chiefs game was amazing. And but I think Bisaccia, I think, had a little more. He's a guy that hasn't coached, and but again, the players really wanted this guy, and I don't think he could ignore the players 2 years in a row. And I think, again, this hasn't been a head coach, but I think they're doing smart things, like bringing in a couple of the Cincinnati head coach, former head coach
Marvin Lewis.
Marvin Lewis. I think that was a great hire. I think he was there, somewhat last year because, again, I can't talk about being a head coach, but it's got to be overwhelming, and just to suddenly step in there on a professional team like that. So, so far, and just reading the papers, I hopefully it works out. And again, the draft the year before, not that great. But I thought, and again, I don't follow it. Oh, the tight end, they're giving them bad grades for that. I thought that was a great pick, only because they should get a quarterback. You don't want to take a second level guy. That first pick has to help you initially, and that, this guy, and he's a Bay Area guy. So I thought that was a heck of a pick. And after that, I don't know these guys, but the reviews, the second round pick from, was it Oregon, the lineman? They say good things about him. So, we'll see, and again, the bottom line, stay healthy.
Yeah.
Now, I know there's one question that fans probably are curious about. It's been a topic in Raider Nation and everything. The feud between Al Davis and Marcus Allen. I know you and me talked about it on chats before, but I know people probably want to know your insight on that feud between the two.
I never really, it's one of those things to Al. I'm not going to go up to him and say, "What the hell are you thinking?" Blah, blah, blah. But like I said, in fact, I got Marcus Allen's autobiography, and he thought it went back to the fact that he thought that Ron Wolf wanted to draft him, and Al wanted Walter Abercrombie. But in fact, it was Al who wanted Marcus, and Ron, liked Walter Abercrombie, who was a very good player. And he had nothing against Marcus. I mean, he loved the guy. He said, you could even make him a free safety. He'd be great. So, but, he just somehow had a feeling for Walter, which is fine. But so we get Marcus, and Marcus is great. I mean, what are you going to say? Just, go to the Super Bowl and this and that. And then somehow, I don't know, there's just, I can't put my finger on it, but there's just something that kind of was irritating Al about it. And 85, has this great MVP season and such. Now, if I had to point to one thing that maybe Al finally found a reason to not go, we started the year off 0-3, and then we're 5-3. Now we're 8-4, and I mean, I still remember this thing, and we're 8-4. We're playing the Chiefs, and we're in overtime, and we're in field goal range. And, just one more play. Jager's going to go in, kick the field. We're going to win. and Marcus gets the ball, and Marcus is such a competitive guy. He makes another cut, and the ball pops up in the air. An Eagle guy gets it, and he's running down the field, and Dokie Williams makes an amazing play and tackles it, fights off blockers and tackles the guy at the one. I mean, Dokie was a really nice receiver, a little guy. And if somehow we had stopped him, that would have been one of the great plays of all time. And the next play, Randall Cunningham, takes it in for the touchdown. And I think from that point on, Al really, just kind of started looking around, whether Roger Craig, Eric Dickerson, even drafting a guy like Vance Mueller and such. And I think, and then Marcus, is a very proudful guy. Obviously Bo came in. I mean, Bo was, who can argue with Bo? That's another one. But, it started to, wear on him more and more. And he's not going to take this, and when he said, "The hell with this, we're going to go." He went on with Al Michaels before the Monday night game. He said, "The guy's trying to sabotage my career," and after that, Al just, here's a story, I didn't get into, but he wanted somebody, wanted one of the coaches to go on TV and just say Marcus is a liar, and this guy wouldn't do it. And so he had Art do it. And in Marcus's book, there's a section where Ronnie Lott talks about that. And he says, we really lost a lot of respect for Art when he went on TV and did that. And, but, at that point, then it's just, Al, had Italian Alzheimer's. He would forget anything but a grudge. Like even when Marcus, hit, I don't know if it was 10,000 or something with the Chiefs, and, they wanted to, and we're playing in LA, and the Chiefs asked if, we could stop the game and such and acknowledge it. And Al wouldn't do that, which, whatever. That's, so I don't really know where else to, to point, specifically, but the last straw was, for Al was Marcus going on TV like that. And, there's a story, I maybe I didn't put that in there, but, we're going to the game. I think we're playing the Giants, and he tells the coaches, do not play Marcus in this game. And Terry,
it's in the book.
It is. Yeah, Terry Robisky's the coordinator. And we'll go down right to the end of the game, and we got to score a touchdown. And so he sends Marcus in, and Tom Walsh, he told us not to play him. He says, God damn it, I want to win this game. And he scores, and I think the way story, Al went to Marcus and went to Terry after the game. You took me on, but you won. Gave him a little that kind of thing. But that was anyway. So, and Marcus, I love Marcus because again, I got to know a lot of the players, particularly because I was best friends with Terry, and I remember it. Not there's all Terry said, "Come on, we're going to a shooting range tonight." And Marcus was there, and Sean Jones, and a few other players. And I wasn't a pistol guy, but Mark, come on, try my pistol. And it was like a hair trigger. I mean, I shot like 15 bullets, and my heart was racing. It was pretty cool. But it's the only time I've ever shot a pistol. So whatever. But so I got to know a lot of these guys. And Sean Jones worked in pro personnel for us after he retired, and people. It was just kind of James Lofton worked in pro personnel, and now he's a really good announcer. Anyway, so there's very few players I really didn't care for. And
well, I have a question that kind of follows. So you say you think, or that if it was something that made Al Davis not like Marcus Allen was a play on the field, is that the same thing that happened with Jon Gruden? Because in the documentary about the fumble in New England in that division game, Lincoln Kennedy says, the offense line, there was a third down play when they tried to go up the middle, and Middleton went the wrong way, and instead of trying to do it again, Gruden ended up punting the ball, and Al Davis felt like you wasn't aggressive enough after they lost that game, of course, because we all know it was a fumble. They call it an incomplete pass, which also, if that happened a few seconds earlier, that wouldn't have got reviewed because that was within the 2 minutes, but that's a whole nother situation. Is that was that really the reason why Al Davis really had Jon Gruden, really entertained and then pulled the trigger to send Jon Gruden to Tampa Bay. And I remember that happened when they were doing the Texans had just, they were just coming into that year, and it was during that supplemental, that expansion draft for the Texans. And the first thing they said was Jon Gruden gets traded to Tampa Bay, and we were all like, "Wait, what happened?" Was it because of that play where Jon Gruden didn't? He ended up just punting the ball instead of just going for it in that division round game.
To be honest, I've never heard that. Now, never really kind of passed that feeling on to me. There's one other play. Well, there's two other plays that I need to mention that you'll remember. We're playing the Jets the week before, and if we win the game, we're going to host New England, or whatever. Or maybe we even get a bye. I forget what it was, but it comes down to the last. We've got the ball. We've got 3rd and 1. This great short yardage thing, and if we get the first down, game's over. And we ran a play action pass, and Rolando McClain is wide open in the middle. John Ritchie is wide open on the right, and Rich Gannon, God bless, was as good a quarterback, and he must have just got and he threw it like 5 feet over Rolando McClain's head.
Roland Williams.
Roland Williams, and and I'm sure Rich still wakes up thinking about that. And if we get the first down, game's over. You never hear the tuck game. That's one play. Now, the first play on that series in the snow game on that series, I think we don't gain a yard or something. But if you watch it again, I can't watch that game. I still judge. Charlie Garner gets it, and Al always says if he broke to the outside, he'd still be running. But we gained the 9 yards. And then, like I said, it was Middleton just getting a brain fart, and poor John Ritchie having to take on Jeff. It was no, but I don't. I think the punting, whatever. It's in the snow. They gotta get a lot of whatever. So I mean, but he didn't bring it to me. In fact, I went to the Florida USA All-Star game. So I stayed in New England. I stayed at a hotel, and I didn't know. I heard that the plane was delayed for a bunch of hours, which really put the people on edge. But I went to so I'm down there, and Al called me, and I started talking about what's going on and this and that. He said, no, what are people saying? And there was a guy, Terry McDonough, whose dad was a very famous sports writer on TV, great guy. And Terry comes up to me and says, John, I never would. After there was a famous game where Sugar Bear Hamilton hits John Stabler in the head. Ken Stabler in the head. And I've seen it. It looks like he hits him. He says, he barely touched him. That was the worst call in the world. I swear I'd never feel any sympathy for the Raiders. And let me tell you something. You guys got fucked. It was just, and that's nice of you to say and such. But, and then Al called me and he says, what's the opinion down there? And I told him the story. That was it. I said, Al, that was the consensus, which didn't make him feel any better, And then, at the owners meeting with the coaches, I forget who the coach was, says, look, if you got 50 people in a bar and they say it's a fumble, it's a fumble. Well, that was a fumble. And then Jim Fossil, they say something, well, he put his hand down and, and no, he has to do this. He said, I never coached that. And his hand was on the ball. Anyway, I still.
There's a story about Kubrick on all his faxes about faxing the picture of his hand on the ball on all his faxes after that.
Yeah. Well, and the other point that I think needs to be brought up was if we won that game, we would have gone to Pittsburgh, and we were not going to lose to Pittsburgh. Cordell Stewart was the quarterback. We weren't going to lose that game. Now, so now the other thing I'm willing to concede, if we went to the Super Bowl, I'm not sure we would have beaten the Rams, because I really think New England had two really good linebackers, Lawyer Malloy, and in fact, the guy we almost drafted from Syracuse, Lawyer Malloy, and anyway. But they were really good. And I really thought they took the Rams out of their game. They were beating the hell out of those receivers. And I think, so whether we win the game or don't win the game, I think Al would have been obligated to keep Gruden there. How do you fire a coach who takes you to the Super Bowl? So those little things just drive you crazy. And you just think, and I really think John would have stayed. It would have been an amazing decade with us and with Indianapolis and New England. I mean, it would have been just a great, going back to the Pittsburgh days, and and the Pittsburgh Miami Raiders. It would have been just anyway.
Yeah, I was going to say, just like they lose in the snow division round to New England, almost kind of not resembles, but it's almost like when you say Pittsburgh in, was it 1972, 74, 72?
Yeah,
72 was the Immaculate Reception, the division round in the snow. And I know it's two different plays that ended the game, the Immaculate Reception. I don't want to say which one hurt Al Davis the most, but I guess we had a debate on an earlier episode. I guess it's like, which one was the more devastating? It's probably the Steelers. It's probably an easy question, but
well, it's. I mean, that was just a great play. Obviously the rule was a little bit different then. If the receiver just bounced off him to another play, that was an illegal play at that point. But just another story. Danny Connors, was a great linebacker in those days, and he was a D lineman at Miami. And he went to the Raiders. Really a smart player, wonderful guy. He passed away a couple of years ago, but he talks about, he shares stories. He says, I was in every play that game except that one play, and on that defense, I would have been backing down into that spot. So anyway, but that's really, but that's Danny. He was a little stories that probably people who knows. But that was just an amazing, and then of course the Immaculate Deception.
Deception.
The names were great, and just as nobody pretty much Rubisky. I was watching it, and that I see the highlight every so often. It's and Bill King, Banaszak and Rubisky in the backfield, and I didn't realize it until I got to really know Terry, and I think he swung out for a pass, and then Banaszak makes the play. Now if you watch if they show it overall and there's a Charger player that's yelling at the official, and Terry Rubisky, he's a Cajun guy. He went to LSU with this guy, and I saw it. I said, Terry, what were you saying to that player? He said, get away from him, motherfucker. That's a touchdown. Get away from me. He says, get the hell out of it. That's a touchdown. Get away. But if you see it, that's what Terry was saying. So, but that was my first year with the team, and we had lost the opener to a close game to the Broncos, and so this was a big game to win because we would have been 0-2. So that was pretty cool.
So there's been some reports that when Jon Gruden was torpedoed by the NFL, Dave Ziegler came in the next year as the general manager, and Champ Kelly was the assistant. And Champ Kelly's gone on record saying that the scouting staff and that whole department was just in complete disarray when they got there, and they did a lot of work to try and systemize and organize everything, get everybody on the same page. And then obviously we know McDaniels lost the team, lost the locker room, lost the fan base, and he gets fired. Ziegler goes with him. Tom Telesco comes in. He's a very organized guy, been a GM for a long time. I know you're on the outside looking in now, but how are you feeling about how the Raiders are looking as far as scouting and general manager situation now?
Well, I think that's absolutely a very valid point. But I think you want to go back further to when they hired Reggie McKenzie, and I worked with him for when he came in up and through the draft, and he was terrible. It was not very good. And you didn't come on earlier where I was kind of bad mouthing Mickey Marvin, and they fire me and Bruce, and they keep Mickey Marvin, and and Reggie was just a kind of a slow moving guy, and I wasn't very impressed with him. And then when Gruden came in, they didn't fire Reggie, and I remember Greg Papa said, this is just not going to work. Jon Gruden's got all the energy in the world. And Reggie McKenzie, it takes him 5 minutes to get out of his chair. So, which was, and so they needed to make changes there. And, but Mayock comes in. And I think, as I mentioned, Mayock, he's not a personnel guy. He's a guy that never missed a player. Watch him when he's on ESPN. He's never missed one. He was never wrong about it. And it's different. It's a lot different. And, So then, like I mentioned earlier, to bring in McDaniel, that was Mark didn't know anyone to hire, and as I said, he's a sexier pick, and they were terrible, and I think at this point, they got professionals in now. The GM, I didn't deal with him and such, but it sounds like they've hired good people. So, knock wood. And, the draft, I liked, the tight end, and I can't, the second round guy seems good. And I can't really go past that. But, the key, it's a little scary. Now you got two basically backup quarterbacks, that have experience as starters. So, we'll see. I thought the guy last year wasn't too bad for a first year coming in.
Yeah, Aiden O'Connell.
Yeah, he's got to be a better player. And so we'll see. Mention is, has been a legit backup, and he's had coach high starting experience. So, just to draft a quarterback, it really didn't make any sense. And I got to support what they did there.
Yeah. And I've had a couple of our new rookies on my podcast just today.
Because today, I was going to say, I watched.
Yeah. Had Will Governor on. I've had Trey Taylor on. And one thing that I've noticed is that it seems like the Raiders are scouting and drafting even UDFAs, guys of high caliber that you're not going to have to worry about. Like they're not drafting guys who are party animals. They're not drafting guys who are going to go out there and get in car wrecks at 100 miles an hour and ruin their lives and other people's lives and stuff. Not that I don't think, and I know that's like going to be in a reference to a particular player. I don't think he meant to do that, and it was a tragic accident. But you have to be smart. And so far, the rookies that I've had on my show that I've interviewed, these guys are very cerebral. They are very high caliber guys that you're not going to have to worry about getting themselves into some kind of trouble. And I talked to Wu about it today on my show is, if back when I was 23, if I was in the NFL, potentially making a whole bunch of money, I probably wouldn't be in the NFL for an entire season because I would just ruin it. I was reckless.
In Vegas.
Yeah, in Vegas, especially.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so the fact that we got these guys that we're drafting that are high caliber dudes, they're not just really talented, but they're smart guys, and they're guys who are going to be around for a long time, and barring any injury or anything like that. Was that a big thing when you guys were there? Did you take into consideration is this person going to get into trouble and we're going to lose him, or was the NFL just such a different time back then where you didn't really care if they got in a little trouble?
Well, the drugs really became an issue in, I guess it would have been the early 80s. I mean, the Raiders win the Super Bowl in 80, and were they 7-9, or there was a big drug issue, and not just with the Raiders. It was all around the league. And in fact, Terry Rubisky was hired to clean that part up, before he became a full-time coach, and he did an amazing job about that. And after that, we really started doing things more. But you bring up a very good point about Vegas, and I was, not that I was there, but I was thinking if I was there and I was in charge, I would go to every big hotel, and I'd find the security guy, give him a couple of season tickets. I'd go to wherever players want to hang out, give the person in charge there a couple of tickets, and if someone is carrying on, either let us know. And maybe they're getting drunk. We'll send someone out there and stop it. I mean, that Ruggs thing is just, it's mind. It's beyond. And I think he really kind of got away with a lot because I don't think he's going to be in prison much longer. I can almost see him wanting to get another shot. Which, I mean, what he did is just is beyond it. I can't even talk about it. But yes, they absolutely have to. Makes more sense to find character guys like you said, and everybody's doing it, but obviously Vegas, there's a lot more temptation and such, and I think they really need to make it clear about the other thing is the gambling thing. It's so easy to get a gamble, and guys are getting suspended. You go, and maybe they can gamble on a basketball game, but you bet on any football game, any player betting on any football game, and you're gone. for or at least suspended, and these guys are getting lifetime suspensions. So, no, it's a very valid point, and I have to, they're smart people that, that they've hired. Not, there aren't some of the other people aren't so smart, and that's fine that you hire the right people that keep on top of those things.
Yeah.
I guess. Well, speaking of the Vegas thing, I know Al Davis would always, on his birthday, he would always go to Vegas, and they'll have a party for him in Vegas. But did Al Davis really imagine one day moving the team to Las Vegas? Like, was that ever in his, like, just speaking about it? Did he ever speak about the Raiders going to Las Vegas?
I never heard. I think he really, the gambling thing was still a major deterrent for any teams to do that. But you talk about that the big party. He did it every 5 years, not every, and it was great.
Oh.
It was a lot of fun to do that. But he loved Vegas. And just an aside, David Hum, who was Kenny Stabler's backup all the years, he had a very special relationship with Al, and Al would call up David. David was in PR and stuff. Hey, David, I come into town, come pick me up, and we'll have lunch. And blah, blah, blah. And David loved doing it. And just to kind of carry the David Hum story, this was terrible. Not terrible. It's kind of he was always the backup. And then we'd cut him and we bring him back. And we'd cut him and we bring him back. And then he had this game against Chicago in 1984 that people say was like the most vicious game ever in football. If you recall that game or not. We had won the Super Bowl, and the Bears were just about, they're going to win the Super Bowl, I think, in 2 years or whatever it was. And they had that defense and the people having trouble blocking. So Plunkett didn't dress for that game. So it was Mark Wilson, and David was the backup. And Wilson, hurts his thumb. That hurt. I got to, whatever, don't ignore. He hurts his thumb. So David comes in, and David loved to play, and he's having a good time, and he gets hit high, low, and middle, and he's just out. I mean, he's like laying there, and he's just he's looking up, and the trainer says, "You ready to get up now?" He says, "Can I lay down here a little bit longer?" And he is clobbered, and he just can't go back in the game, and but he thinks he's going to go back in, and the backup quarterback was Ray Guy, because Plunkett's in street clothes. Because Ray Guy had like the best arm, and he says, "I ain't going out there." And so they brought Mark Wilson in, and his thumb, he could barely grab the ball. In fact, we kept running option passes with Marcus, because at that point he was our best passer. But so anyway, David died, and had a big memorial for him. And I got there the day before, and it was with Steve Sylvester, who played with the Raiders, Bob Nelson, and they're telling stories about David. And so I was talking to Jim Plunkett. We told stories about, that game and such. And he says, well, David was on the sideline, and he thinks he's going to go back in. And he says, hey, Plunk, could you hold this for me? He says, what's that? And he puts his hand in his mouth. He pulls out 3 teeth. It was just, anyway. So David's going to be done for his career. And he has knee surgeries, he's got all these surgeries done. So the next year, we're playing. This is 84, and Jim Plunkett got a little shaken up in the game. And at that time, my sister was in graphic art, and she was talking about moving to Vegas, and David's in PR. So I call up David. I said, David, Jon Kingdon. And he doesn't answer. I said, David, are you there? He says, yeah, I'm here. He says, oh, well, my sister's talking about coming to Vegas. I was wondering if you know some people, she might get some interviews. He says, oh, thank God. I saw Plunk got hurt. I think they called me to come back, and I just couldn't do it. But it was. But now here's my best Al Davis story. So David was was a color guy on the radio, and so he got MS, multiple sclerosis, and so I used to sit next to him on the plane. If he'd fall asleep, he's like moaning and pain. But I'd help him up to the press box, and they did everything. And he was a great commentator. And he did it for a couple of years. And then he called Al up and said, look, I'm sorry. I can't do it anymore. It's just too tough physically for me. He says, David, we're going to get you involved. And what Al did, he set up a system at David's house, and where he could broadcast from there. and he wasn't doing the color, but he did the pregame show, the postgame show. He had a talk show, and that to me was like the greatest thing Al ever did. To make sure he was great that way. When people got sick and such, my dad died. He couldn't have been more empathetic. We had a guy who worked for the Raiders. His middle son had a brain tumor, and Al found the top guy in the country, and the guy took care of the kid. Had a complete recovery. Things like that. He was just amazing, and David did it until he couldn't do it anymore. But my little story, and David just fought this thing like hell, and we got to be very, very close after even that, because we both had daughters about the same age, and his daughter kind of kept him alive for a few more years. But so I talk, and I used to tell David things he could put on his show that people didn't know. I wasn't giving away plays or secrets, but it really helped him. But one time I'm talking to him, he calls me. He says, "John, I was at the doctor today." He said, "David, I can't let you drive anymore." And I said to him, "Doc, you're not man enough to take these keys away from me." And David knew it was going to happen, but that was his last shot, and he knew it. And so so those were just little stories. But David, just a favorite guy, and so sad that he passed away. But the Raiders had a lovely memorial for him, and they had announced, well, just the family to be at the burial site. And and so we knew his daughter, and this guy Steve Sylvester knew him, Bob Nelson. And she said, and she walked by. I said, we were hoping, of course you guys are going. But so I was very honored. There was just me and Steve Sylvester and Bob Nelson, along with the family. And then the next year, they had at the Southern Nevada Sports Hall of Fame, which is in Las Vegas. They announced the day, and David was in the first class, and Al flew out there and presented him, which was very cool. But they only invited, the next year they had the David Hum Memorial Scholarship for, heart or desire and drive. And the family just invited me and Steve Sylvester, which was very cool. I really thought that was great that they did that. And so that's one of my favorites. So, I think I'm kind of talked out here.
Man, I just been enjoying all of it, man.
You and me both.
I have one important question. Sorry, I got ice. Sorry.
No, please.
Okay. Now the Raiders are in Vegas. You got a whole new fan base, whole new, hometown. Well, not hometown, but whole new field and everything. Al Davis has been gone for about almost 13 years. October 8th, 2011. Do you think? I guess a two-parter. You worked at Al Davis. Was the public perception of Al Davis, did it have merit? Did he like the public perception, of how he, because no one really knows. He never put it out there that, I'm going to go help out so-and-so's family or so-and-so sick. I'm going to go. He never put it out there. And even the people that he helped were like, how did Al Davis know that so-and-so was sick in my family? Matt Millen had said that story about his dad having heart surgery, I think it was. But sure. Did Al Davis, his perception on the outside, how did Al Davis, I guess, relish it? And then the second part is, do you feel that now it's been, like I said, about almost 13 years since he passed, do you feel that mystique, that what Al Davis brung and built with the Raiders, do you feel that has been lost with the move to Vegas and all these changes after the fact? I guess, yeah. Do you feel like Al Davis's legend has not been taught or been, brought to that next fan base in Las Vegas? I think I worded it right.
No, I understand what you're saying, but I think they're doing a nice thing with the Eternal Flame and the stadiums at Al Davis Way, and people like Al, Bill Walsh. People don't forget those guys. And I think it gets passed on. The fans that were, I think the parents pass it on to their sons and pass it on, and I think he stays on like that. But to answer your question about did he like the acknowledgement, it's just kind of two little stories. Was when my dad died, he sent this big silver and black bouquet to the house, and the guy that delivered it, he said, and this wasn't, this was I don't know, it wasn't, 20, maybe 10 years, whatever it was, But the guy that delivered it said, sees Al Davis in the Oakland. This is better than delivering it from the president, which is not. So anyway, the point being, so I got back and I went up to him and I said, gee, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. He goes, that's, don't worry about it. And I said, the guy that delivered it said it was better than getting something from the president. He said that. He really said that. Huh? So, what you're saying, he liked the recognition, but he would never, publicly, obviously if the situation presented itself. And then just another one where I was at the Hula Bowl and Hayden Fry was had been the head coach at Iowa, and he was there, as a celebrity kind of thing. And I had my Raider gear on. I had never gone to Iowa, but he said, called me over and says, hey, tell Al Davis I said hi and remind him how I stole his offense from Fort Belvoir. Al, during the Korean War, he was a coach at Fort Belvoir, Virginia, and he coached the team. And so I got back and this and that. And he said, so I said, yeah, blah, blah, blah. And by the way, Hayden Fry, said to say hello. Oh, that's nice. That's nice. And then he said, remind you that he stole your offense at Fort. But he said that. Yeah, I knew he did it. And so little things like that he really enjoyed that, I was able to pass on, which maybe some people couldn't. So stuff like that was pretty cool.
So I just had one last question for you. And that's, we've been talking a lot about Al Davis. There's actually in my opinion, there's more known about Al Davis than there actually is Mark Davis, even though Al's passed on and Mark is the current owner. You were around the team for a long time. What's your thoughts on Mark and how he runs the team as the owner, taking over for his dad?
Great question.
You see the the media guide, and the whole thing's got like 2 pages of Al, and it's got Mark's picture. First of all, just his exposure with the team was minimal. He never had anything to do with player personnel, and he'd show up at games and the like. And I didn't leave on good terms. And it was explained to me that we were going to go with younger scouts. And I'm not saying who said these things, but you say something like that, that's illegal. And Bruce and I actually sued the team on age discrimination. Now, we didn't hire a good lawyer, and we didn't lose. So I'm sort of, to be perfectly candid, I'm not persona non grata there. And, so I wouldn't even bring my name up with those people. But there are people there that I still have a very nice relationship with. But Mark isn't one of them, and I'll just leave it at that. I'll let the record speak for himself. How about that?
Yeah.
Of his performance. So that's I won't comment otherwise.
Well, I'm hopeful because it has been a pretty disappointing performance up to date. But I am hopeful that he's learned some good lessons by all of the losing. And it looks like he has. In my opinion,
we'll call it hard knocks.
Yeah, the hard knocks. I think he's kind of learned a lot of those hard lessons about actually paying attention to people who know what they're talking about instead of trying to do the flashy thing. So hopefully he doesn't make that mistake again.
No, I walk in from afar, and it looks like they seem to be pointing in the right direction. And the key, avoid injuries, and the key that one of these quarterbacks have to step up. You avoid injuries and take it from there.
Hey, Asylum, anything?
No, I think I keep asking questions, make this go forever. So I think I'm good for now.
I guess that means if you want to know more, make sure you go and get the book, or as Asylum had said, the Audible, because you can hear the voices. The guy who played, I got to listen to that. I read the book, but now I want to listen to the Audible.
I'm telling you, the narrator does a hell of a job. If you could pick a perfect narrator for a book, this was the perfect combination.
Well, you know what? Let me say one little thing that's kind of, I don't know if I'm going to throw a name out there. A guy named Ron Shelton. Ron Shelton's a movie guy, and he did White Man Can't Jump, Bull Durham, Tin Cup. He's like the Spielberg of sports movies. You've heard those. Anyway, he loved the book. I actually did a Zoom meeting with him about the book, so it was pretty cool. So Ron Shelton really liked it. If I'm sure you know those movies, right? And
Oh yeah.
Oh, I know those movies.
Yeah.
Ron said that was pretty cool. So that was great. That's one more endorsement. That was great.
Well, we want to thank you. I mean, like to have a former Raider executive that was there alongside Al Davis. This is a big step for us. And, you know, you had mentioned Derek Ramsey earlier. We had him on the show too. So we have two great Raider conversations on this show, and we haven't even hit a year yet. So we are happy about that. And we appreciate you coming on and telling Al Davis stories and Raider stories and just behind the scenes, behind the curtain in the war room. So we appreciate that. And I mean, we're past the 2-hour mark, but we were like, no, if we're going overtime, let's keep going. You know,
we like going,
man.
Yeah, it's 4th and 1 overtime, man. Got to go for it.
Perfect. Well,
we're like the Buffalo Wings commercial. Overtime, let's go.
That that I think you'd like to, that former coaches or whatever that I can get hold of for you. I'll certainly pass it on. And thank old Robert Hockenbaugh. That was nice. He thanked me. That was good. I just saw his name up there.
I would definitely hit you up if there's anybody you could help bring on the show. I mean, we would definitely appreciate it. I mean, you were great. I mean, I'm not even gonna lie. This was probably our best show to date.
Yes,
I
appreciate it. Thank you so much. I look forward to doing it again when I kind of get my breath back.
Well, thank you very much. And once again, go to Amazon.com. I believe the link should work. I did try it out. The link is in the description. Go in there, get the book. You will not be disappointed. Al Davis, behind the Raider Shield, untold stories from longtime Davis confidants. So make sure you get that book. And like I said, one more time, I want to say thank you very much, Jon Kingdon, for coming on. We appreciate you and your knowledge.
Nice to meet you too. Thank you. Thank you I appreciate everything. That was great.
Thank you very much right there. Raider legend right there. Oh, I gotta play the outro, which is the same video we just played. That is where to go? That is not it. It's
when you have great coaches, then after you have great coaches, you get great players. You have a great organization, and you tell them one thing: just win, baby.
Wait, let's move this over here. All right, Raider D. We also appreciate you coming on, but I don't know. Do we want to go just until
if you want to stay on a little bit, we can go a little bit longer.
This is an Al Davis special.
I've done a 3-hour show. Remember?
Yeah, I think that my longest one I ever did was 3 hours, and I swore to myself I would never do that again. But for you guys, I'll make the exception.
Oh, we appreciate that. We appreciate that. We do apologize. It definitely wasn't as planned. It went a little longer.
Oh no, I am so glad, man.
Hold on, Anna. It's not over yet, Anna. Sorry, go ahead.
You sat in the green room for a little bit. We appreciate your patience.
Yeah.
With that,
no, I was just enjoying, man. I love having legends on and hearing them talk about stuff. I had Bruce Wilkerson on, Super Bowl champ, Raiders legend, left tackle, on my show, and it was just an hour and a half of just pure enjoyment of hearing Raiders history and stories. So for me, I'm a storyteller. I love the stories of the team and hearing these greats talk about them. It's enjoyable,
It's
man.
the history, right? I mean, the history. To hear the history. That's one thing about us in this show. We like to remember the history, teach the history, but also teach overall. And if you forget your history, then you don't know the future. And to hear the history from the people who were there is the most spectacular thing in my book that you could do. It's one thing to talk the history, but to hear it from the guys that actually went through it is one of those things you got to sit there and listen to, because that's the most entertaining thing in my book.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm so thankful that we have avenues like YouTube, right? Which when we were growing up, we didn't have. because it allows these types of stories to continue on when the mainstream media could care less, right? The mainstream media is not going to bring guys like him on and talk to him because he's not the hot topic right now, right? And so I think YouTube, and this is why YouTube is now dominating in the media markets and why so many more people are watching YouTube rather than watching cable TV, is because they get unique points of view and perspectives that they're never going to get on Fox or CBS or ESPN or anything like that. And, you know, it's guys like you and others that are out here just doing this and, you know, making things happen. Right. I know, like with me and my show, I just jumped on, you know, I was just making like fan content at the beginning of the season, made a few videos, nothing really serious or important. And with everything that was happening with McDaniels and then AP coming in and lighting the nation on fire and the team on fire and everybody's playing like their hair's on fire, I just got super excited and I decided, you know what, I'm gonna jump in to this this arena and just say my piece as well. And next thing you know, I got videos taken off and my subscribers are taken off. And it was really like, this is a super powerful platform, right? Anybody can literally get on here. And if you do a good job, it's from your heart, people are going to recognize that. And you can like play a part in history. And so that's how I'm with you guys, man. I think getting these guys on that the main media is going to ignore to tell these stories is very important because it's the only way we're going to document them.
Yeah.
Well, it's not the only way. He wrote a book, but you see, like he told us stories that weren't even in the book, right?
No, and that's true. And it's not even just the book, but some people don't read books anymore. That's why I push the audio books. Yeah. But at the same time, like you said, this media right here, this is where everybody's going to, and to be able to bring this in and hear it, see it, it's like reliving it again for the older people like us. You know, I mean, I guess I'm the oldest one here, but still, you know,
I'm probably not far behind you.
You know, it's reliving it, and then at the same time, it's still that aspect of teaching that history, and the history is what makes, you know, the Raiders great. I mean, in everything. And when we get to that level of being great again, these are the shows that people are going to go back to and be able to relive, and just like, you know, we did with you and everything, go back to it and want to use in their shows when they do it, because this is the only access to the history that they have.
Yeah.
Because books get forgot about. Audiobooks they're a fad now, but they're going to disappear again because of this new media and putting it out there and making sure it lives on and isn't forgotten is the biggest thing. I mean, I have Al Davis tattooed on my neck. I got John Madden tattooed on my neck. But, you know, there's a history. There's a reason why I did it. They're the godfathers of the Raiders. But people don't understand why they're the godfathers. And it shows that, like, what we could do and put out there is what's going to remind everybody of our history and not let the Al Davises get forgotten, the Jon Kingdons, the John Maddens. You know, they're not going to get forgotten because of this new media that's out there.
Yeah, if you ask, you know, young kids these days, and kids, I'm including people all the way in their 20s and sometimes in their 30s, who is John Madden? They'll be like, oh, that's the video game.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, there's a video game named after him. What else did he do? Oh,
Tough Acting, 10 Acting.
I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I've heard his name somewhere, but I'm not really sure what he did. It's like, oh my God.
Well, I hope none of them say, yeah, isn't that the guy who makes those shoes? No, that's Steve Madden, you idiot.
But yeah, I think it's so important because, you know, like we lost John and he was an icon, right?
Yeah.
He did so much for football, not just as a coach, but I remember, you know, growing up, John Madden was the voice of the football games I would be watching. He was the commentator. and his boom and his bam and his zig and his zag and the little yellow mark across the screen.
And
right?
the teleprompter, or no, what was it called?
The telestrator.
It wasn't the teleprompter, but it was called
Illustrator, yeah.
the drawings and
Telestrator.
you know,
Yeah.
Illustrator.
Yeah,
There you go.
mean,
You know.
It's he had such a major impact on football, on anybody that loved football. I grew up playing, you know, Madden games left, right, and center. I'd get a new one, you know, every couple of years. And I, you know, played them all the way up until just a couple of years ago when I finally decided, okay, it's time to grow up. I'm going to stop playing video games. I got stuff to do. So I sold my Xbox, and that was the end of that. But yeah, I mean, it's important that we are able to get these types of stories out there and get these guys in front of a camera, and then, you know, it's up to God, but as long as YouTube never like goes away, then this record will remain there for anybody that is interested. They'll be able to literally come back and watch your guys' interview with him and learn some history about the Raiders. And yeah, it's just the more that we have, the better. I get asked all the time on my show, you know, about other creators, content creators about the Raiders. Most everybody does a fantastic job because they're doing it from their heart. Some people are doing it because it's their job. Some people are doing it because they want to make money. And that's fine. Like, I don't have a problem with that. I make money off of ad revenue from YouTube. I have sponsors, and I have, you know, clothing line and all this stuff, obviously, because if I'm going to do this full time, I also got to pay bills, but that's not why I started it. That's not why I do it. But the more that we have voices, I was just talking to my boy earlier from Raider Nation Hotspot, and I was telling him after my interview with Woo, you know, he's asked me.
I saw that. I was in the chat. That was a hell of an interview.
Yeah,
you know,
Woo's a great kid. But Hot Beavers, you know, he was like, you know, bro, my views are just so low right now, and I was like, it's the off season. Of course they're going to be low. It is what it is. You know what I mean? It's like, but keep going, yeah. Because
that's why I told Savage. I said this is the make or break part of the season.
Yeah,
when it comes to this stuff, when it's the hardest shit to come up with content, this is where you got to struggle through it, because when the season starts, that's the easiest part.
Yeah.
So I don't know how you guys feel about Mitchell Rentz. The nation split 50-50 on him. I've made a video calling him out about
I saw that. That's how I got introduced to you, actually.
Aiden
when
O'Connell.
you had him on.
But you know what? He came on my show. He hit me up right away, and he was like, bro, let's talk about it. Like, we can have different opinions. No problem. Let's talk about it. I was like, well, then come on my show and we'll do it. And he did. He was like straight up about it. He held his ground. I disagreed with him, but I gave him his respect as a man for standing up for himself, and what he felt like he did wasn't wrong. And so now we kind of conversate once in a while on DMs on Instagram or whatever. And I asked him the same question, I don't know, like a month ago. And he said the same thing. He was like, this is the down season, even for our channel. And he's got over 160 something thousand subscribers. And he'll get like 2,000 or 3,000 views on some of his videos, where during the season he'll get 50 or 60,000 or more. Right. So that's why I tell all the content creators, when it comes to, if you're a football content creator, it's seasonal. You have to understand that. And you just got to push through it. And the guys who do push through it, and you stay with it, and you keep going, and you keep telling these stories, even if you feel like there's nothing to talk about, like we've literally discussed everything that there's possible to talk about with the Raiders, and everybody's on vacation and nobody's going to listen, make a video anyway.
Yeah. That's what we try to do. We try to stay consistent, because, and I know I don't know about other fan bases. I can't really speak about that, but Raider fans, diehard Raider fans, Raider Nation, you know, we fiend for just something. Just show me the shield. Just show me the emblem. I don't care. Just show me the emblem. I don't care. Just, you know, whatever. And you know, just put something out. It doesn't, even if you just put out highlights of like the 2002 game, AFC Championship game against the Titans, or just something, you know, whatever. Like, us Raider fans, we want to just find something just to talk about the Raiders. That's what we do. We want to just, whatever has to do with the Raiders. I don't care if you show highlights of Tecmo Bowl and Bo Jackson run all over everybody. I don't care. Just show me some Raiders stuff. And that's what we try to do here. But we also, well, not Tecmo Bowl because I got to connect the Nintendo or whatever. But, we just try to even just talk about the past, in the tailgates in Oakland, and just showing that we're true fans that just want to talk about the Raiders. It doesn't even matter what the conversation's about. We just want to talk about the Raiders. It doesn't even matter. Me and Silent be on the phone all day talking about, okay, did you hear anything? What's going on in training camp? Anything? Nothing? Anything at all? What about who's up for the Hall of Fame? How come Jim Plunkett don't go in? Like, we just try to find something just to kind of pass the day about Raider fans. And also, I want to give shout outs to our significant others because I know they're probably tired of it. Like, aren't you tired of it? There's not even football going on right now. Raider Nation is 24/7. 365, 366 if we count leap year. So that's an extra day we can talk about the Raiders. So that's what we try to do. We just want to start a conversation, but we try to put stuff out there for just like entertainment. We have fun in the show. We do random things. We talk bad about Goodell because no one likes Goodell. So
I don't think Goodell likes Goodell.
So
I think he wakes up in the morning. He looks in the mirror.
Crowd being booed, and have a smile on your face. That's got to tell you something about yourself.
You know what? I think he's got a routine. He wakes up in the morning, he goes in the bathroom, he looks in the mirror, and he boos himself. And he's like, "All right, I can take it. I can take it. Everybody hates me, including me. I can do this."
I like that. I hope he does that.
Yeah, and I mean, but see, what we try to emphasize is that if you're a Raider fan, if you don't know the history, you got to understand that just Al Davis alone, I mean, the reason why, us from Oakland, because, Raiders were started in Oakland in 1960, took over in 63, even when they moved to LA, then that fan base grew. So now we basically own all California. I don't care what the Niners did. It doesn't even matter. We went to 2 or 3 Super Bowls before it even got to the first. So we try to just have people remember Al Davis pissed off the league so many times. That's why our fan base, the true Raider fans, the one that knows the history, like, we love that we were the bad guys. That's why we wore black. We were the bad guys. But if you really think about it, even though Al Davis had that maverick, they call him a maverick, or, the NFL's middle finger. I mean, Al Davis pioneered, and I have a graphic for that. Al Davis pioneered, hiring the first minority head coach, and he won 2 Super Bowls. Hiring Amy Trask, the first female executive CEO, because she got into an argument with him, and he's like, "Oh, okay,
yeah,
put her
hired
up there."
That lady.
Yeah, Art Shell, after retiring and became an assistant coach, the Shanahan years didn't work out, and Al Davis said, "You know what, Art? You've been with me. You won 2 Super Bowls. He was on the sideline coaching in Super Bowl 18. I'm going to hire you to be the next man to carry on the Raider legends, or the Raider legend, the Raider, the Raider way, the Mystique." And it wasn't about, I'm going to just do this because of whatever. And that's why even with, and I made this right there, the Rooney Rule. And I wanted to ask him too, but why is it called the Rooney Rule if Al Davis was doing this before anybody else? And, in this quote, she even asked, and he goes, I don't want no rule named after me. I don't need a rule to tell me, to give me credit. I don't need a rule, because I just do it for, if they can do the job, I'm going to point them to that job. That's what that's about. And people need to understand that, we were the pioneers. The Raiders were the pioneers in the NFL. The merger doesn't happen without Al Davis. Even though he didn't want the merger, he wanted to take down the NFL. The merger doesn't happen because of Al Davis. And that's what this episode was about, was to let people know, remember your history. Remember your history. Remember why the Raider fans, why we are so special, and why everyone envies us, wants to be like us. Why is Shanahan and the Niners wearing a silver and black Niner hat? Because they want to be like us. So that's what the show's about. And that's what we try to emphasize, that if you're a Raider fan, understand that there's special history here. There's special history here. And once you know more about the history, because I wasn't alive when Ken Stabler played. I wasn't alive when the Raiders won their last Super Bowl. I was alive for when they went to their last one against Tampa Bay. I was actually in the Coliseum when they beat the Titans to go to that Super Bowl 37. But I wasn't there during the golden years of the franchise, but I did study a lot of it, and it made me more proud to be a Raider fan. I would watch that DVD, the Raider history, to just kind of psych me up for that next day, for that day. Just kind of get me psyched up that the underdog will always come on top. And that's what the show's about. There you go.
Al Davis was not perfect because he was human, right?
Of
Only
course.
God's perfect. He's not going to be. He made a lot of mistakes, but he made a lot of great things, and he did a lot of firsts in this country, in the NFL. But one thing, I was talking to Bruce Wilkerson when I had him on my show, and he recounted a story where he went to go to a game, and he'd already retired by this time. He hadn't seen Al in, I don't know, a couple of years, and the security was like giving them an issue about coming down the hall, because apparently this was at the time when Al Davis was in a wheelchair, and anytime Al's coming down the hall, the security's got to clear everybody out. And so he's kind of arguing with the security. He's like, I belong here. I'm alumni. And you hear down the hall, he can't even see him, but you hear Al Davis's voice saying, Bruce Wilkerson, is that you? Come here. So the security lets him go in, and he's like, I knew that was you. And he's like recounting, how does he recognize my voice? I'm all the way down the hall and on the side of it. Like, he can't even see me. Right. And so this was one of the things about Al, was he was a people person. He cared very deeply. It was a business, and so he had to trade people. But because he cared so deeply about things, that the issue with Marcus Allen makes perfect sense. When you love somebody so much, or you care about people so much, if you feel the slightest slight from that person, then it stings 10 times harder. And some people are going to react to that 10 times harder. And so I think that's what that whole situation between them was. It's sad to see that.
To even go off of that, in that book, the one we were just going with Jon Kingdon and Kubrick and shit, there was I can't remember the name of the former player, and it's pissing me off, but he kept him on the payroll just so he could keep insurance, because he had hepatitis C, and then the medication he needed was expensive as hell.
Yeah.
And Al Davis was, even in the book it says, they asked him if he could take a pay cut, and his only concern was being on the insurance. And Al Davis said, I will never take him off the insurance.
Yeah.
That was Al Davis. If you were loyal to Al Davis, he was loyal back, and he would do whatever it took to help you out. And then those, like you said, the little slights. And there wasn't many players that slighted him. But when you had that slight, it could get ugly with Al Davis.
Yeah. He was a very personable person. That's just the way it is. I think, he, especially later in his life, you become much more emotional the older you get in those situations, if you already had that personality to begin with. I think Mark Davis kind of has a little bit of this in him. He certainly doesn't get involved with the day-to-day operations at all. He prefers to hire people and let them do the job. The problem is he had bad people around him at first,
giving him false information,
giving him bad information. Bad information. Yeah.
But there's actually even a story out there that when it came to advice that came from Al Davis to Mark Davis was don't get close to the players.
Yeah.
That's where Al Davis was. Al Davis was always close to the players, and he said that's probably his biggest flaw. I was too close to the players. Don't get so close to the players because then you end up
making bad decisions.
Emotional
exactly.
decisions, yeah.
Keeping people that you shouldn't. I mean, there's big stories about Al Davis keeping players longer than he should have, all because he had that connection with that player, and they were well beyond their prime, shit like that. And the NFL is a business, but at the same time, it's a family, and there's a fine line to ride. And I think that's what he was trying to teach Mark Davis when he made that suggestion.
I think that's why Mark Davis hired Ziegler and McDaniels, was because in his mind, probably, I'm hiring a genius who's going to take over the team, and Ziegler's going to do the job as the general manager. And this is all going to be fantastic. And we're going to build a dynasty because, we were just in the playoffs. So we're going to be fine. We're going to just, like he said, this isn't a rebuild. This is, we're just trying to get to that Super Bowl. Yeah. The problem is he ignored everything that McDaniels did in Denver. As though a zebra changes its stripes.
Speaking of know your history.
Yeah. So
see, I think Ziegler was a good GM. If it wasn't for the couple of faux pas that Ziegler had because of Josh McDaniels and being tied to Josh McDaniels, I think Ziegler might have still been the GM.
I don't blame Ziegler near as much as McDaniels, because Ziegler was integral in drafting some good players. And then, we have guys on the team right now like Spillane, who's fantastic for us. That, Ziegler's involved in that. Gobi Myers, Adams, all these things. I mean, I think he did a good job. And like I mentioned it earlier in the podcast, is that, Champ said, when they got there, it was in disarray. From the scouting room down to everything was in disarray, the entire personnel. And this was the first thing that Ziegler told Champ is, you have to go. This is your assignment. You have to go clean this up. We all need to be on the same page. Everybody needs to be doing the same thing. So I don't blame Ziegler on everything. I think that Ziegler was in a way afraid of McDaniels, that McDaniels had way too much control. Maybe it was through his contract or whatever, that he didn't want to stand up to him.
I think it was kind of like a Gruden situation, honestly.
Yeah. Except for I think Ziegler was better at being a general manager than Mayock. And Mayock was a disaster.
I think Mayock had some good qualities and was a good scout of talent.
Damon Arnett. That's all I'm going to say.
Okay. You're going to go off for one play, but there was other players.
The entire NFL, bro. Everybody knew this dude was a train wreck. Everybody knew he was a train wreck. And he drafted him anyway.
Reclamation project. I'm just joking.
No, you want to go like that? You could probably pull out 10 different players that Al Davis did the same thing with.
You could, and I agree with you on that. But here's the thing. He was neither supremely talented and he was a train wreck. So it was like a double whammy. Like some people are just a train wreck, but they're athletically gifted out of their mind. Damon Arnett was neither. And so
it was a high pick too.
Yeah. And the fact that we picked him way too high, and, but I don't think, obviously, he drafted Crosby. All right. Can't complain about that. Miller, right? Can't complain about that. So obviously they hit on some, they missed on an awful lot. But they hit more in the later rounds. The first rounds that were almost completely disasters for every single way. I think the Ruggs situation, I think he was going to be a superstar, and
he was on his way.
He made a terrible decision. I don't hold the same opinion of some people, like what he did was, so horrible. Yes, a girl died, and that is tragic. People die in car accidents all the time. He did not mean to do that. But he was reckless. And so obviously if you're reckless, you got to pay the price because somebody lost their life. But
he never
he
left
had
the
no
scene.
malice in his
He
heart.
took
I mean, he wasn't
responsibility
training.
for his
Yeah.
actions, you
Yeah.
know, and is paying the price now. Does he have an NFL career after this? We'll have to wait and see. But as a man, he stepped up and took responsibility for his actions. And you can't take that away from, yes, he made a mistake. And that's what it was. In the end, it was a bad decision and a mistake.
And I knew it was, it's one of those situations, especially when you're a star wide receiver with the speed that he had. And then he has a C8 Corvette, a souped up C8 Corvette at that was going to be a bad situation. And I think it was a failure of the team to, make sure that this young guy who's a star already and set to become a really big star in the NFL, that he needs some mentorship. And I think that, it's kind of a failure of the team. It was his own failure. He made those own decisions and it sucks. I remember when it was announced, I was flipping through YouTube and it was actually Mitchell Rentz talking about it. And me and my wife were both like, oh God, no. And I didn't even know if the girl had died. I just knew he had been in a DUI accident at that point. And I was like, oh, he's in so much trouble. And then I found out the girl died and I was like, oh yeah, he's really in trouble now. But I'm so excited about the direction that we're in right now because, I've got to talk to some of these rookie guys and I am just so impressed. I am so impressed. They have a level head on their shoulders. They're not letting this, coming to the NFL get to them. Obviously we'll see when they start getting the really big paychecks, but,
it might make sense sometimes.
It does.
And when it comes to the whole, before you go on, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but people forget Josh Jacobs had a similar incident. He didn't hit another person, but he also had an accident where he hurt himself while drunk driving, and people forget about that. It's one of those things that it's a situation in the NFL. You had the Kansas City Andy Reid's son, who had a big accident right before the Super Bowl, did the same thing. It's a thing in the NFL that, teams do what they can to offer rides, all this other shit, but it's up to the players and or coaches and personnel to utilize those said programs of making a simple phone call.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's, Nate Hobbs had a couple of run-ins. One where he was, he wasn't driving, but he was intoxicated in a parked car, and they messed with him.
Oh, he was sleeping though.
Yeah, he was asleep in it, so he wasn't driving. Thank God.
But he had the keys in the ignition, and that was a big deal right there.
Yeah.
That's intent.
They'll get you for that. Yeah, they'll get you with intent on that. I think that's a stupid rule. I mean, if the dude is, made the decision, you know what, I'm not going to drive, I'm going to sleep this off, you should reward that behavior, not punish it. But then he had a speeding ticket, which I understand. I've been on, the Vegas highway system, and people drive pretty quick there. And I had a pretty fast Camaro, and I like to drive fast there too. You know what I mean? Not intoxicated, but I like to drive fast. And
but let's veer back to the young guys you had on your show. Like I said, just recently, you had one today. And if people haven't seen it, go check out his podcast earlier on Raider D podcast.
It's in the description.
It's in the It was I was in the chats, and unfortunately I came in, I think about halfway through it, and I didn't get to one of my comments, got answered, and I appreciate that, even though it was answered earlier in the show. I'm sorry, you had Woo
Governor.
Governor, there you go. It was a good, insight on what's going on and having that UDFA concept of what was going on. So go check that out, because that was a hell of a conversation there.
Yeah. Yeah, I've had him on. I've had Trey Taylor on.
I saw that one too. That was a good one.
Working on getting Dylan Lauby on. and some other guys. And, just so far, I've asked everybody the same question, and it's all about the culture and what's the tone being set there. And they've said the same thing. And that's the second you walk in that door, it is preached loud and clear that there's one culture here, and that's the Raider culture. That's it. And everybody's going to be on this page, and we're going to win. And there are certain, and like he said earlier, Wu said in my interview with him today, that Antonio Pierce and the staff are the gatekeepers. There are certain people that, like, if you don't belong in that building, you're not going to be there. And so everybody is on the same page. Everybody is hyped up. And obviously he's a rookie, right? He hasn't been through the NFL. This is his first time. So everything is going to be, right. But like he said, he's like, I've never been on a team that is so motivated to win as I am now with the Raiders. And everybody has bought in to everything that not just Antonio Pierce has brought to the table, but Marvin Lewis, Patrick Graham, Luke Getsy, and the offense, and all of the assistant coaches, all the way down to the food caretakers and the janitors, and everybody is just bleeding silver and black. And the culture there is unbelievable, which, let's be honest, it hasn't always been that way in the past 20 years.
No,
right?
No,
So
we've
it's
had our
exciting
ups and
to
downs
see.
for the 20 years. We had those times that we thought, it was going to be good. And then partway through the season, it's collapsed and shit. And, we thought we had the right coach. We've had some situations. I know we've had people don't like Derek Carr. I thought he brought stability at the position.
Yeah, I got nothing bad to say about Derek Carr.
I'm
not a Derek Carr lover, where like some people make Derek Carr like he could do no wrong. But you have to give the man his respect. He had multiple seasons of over 4,000 yards.
Well, he brought stability. That was
Yeah.
the thing. The stability he brought to the position that we had, just like the coaches, we had a revolving door at.
I mean, how many offensive coordinators did he play under in 9 years? 5?
No, I think it was more like 7 or 8.
I mean, yeah, it's insane. Well, I mean, he had stability under Gruden because Gruden
under Gruden.
But other than that,
I want to go back to this question that Robert had asked, because it's hard to answer that question, because during that year we were 3-0. And when those emails started to leak, that's when we think we had lost 2 in a row. I mean, I sometimes think, what would have happened if that never happened? If they're over there investigating Washington Redskins or the Commanders, and Gruden's emails.
No, hold on. We don't do that here. It's the Washington Redskins on this channel.
and he had asked, like, you think if that never came out, depending on how that season ended, because that was Gruden's system that Bisaccia carried on, and they got into the playoffs. But it's one of those questions of what if, like, what if it wasn't a fumble? What if it was called a fumble and not an incomplete pass? What would have happened in that season? That's what Kingdon had talked about. And that's the thing about being a Raider fan. There's a lot of what ifs.
Yeah.
What if, So I
yeah,
want to go back to that question. Yeah.
I agree with that. I think, I've got nothing bad to say about Gruden, other than just, from what Champ said, that, the personnel issue in the building was a problem when they got there. But, I just dropped a shorts video with Jon Gruden showing how much he loved football. So if anybody thinks like, he was doing it for money or this or whatever, yeah, the dude got paid, but just go watch that shorts video and you'll see the passion that he has for football. He really, really, lives, breathes, eats football. That's his deal. So I got nothing bad to say about him. But with that being said, Derek Carr's a saint and Jon Gruden's unemployed. And now we have Aiden O'Connell and Antonio Pierce, or Minshew and Antonio Pierce. So I want to ask you guys, I'm an AOC guy, but I love Minshew. I love having that option. I think that everybody is discrediting the Raiders quarterback room at this moment because we have two backup quarterbacks fighting for the starting position. But if you just go back and look at Aiden O'Connell, if he had come out a year earlier, he quite possibly would have been second round pick, maybe
actually,
back a first round pick.
No, there's a lot of people who have said Hondo actually did an article. An article, a podcast on this. If it had come out a year earlier, there was a lot of people in the NFL, and he would have been a first round pick, a late first round, but he would have been a first round pick when the talk was lately before the things went, and they thought they were going to trade O'Connell. There was teams on the phones already ready to trade for O'Connell, because of what they saw out of him last year.
Look, I mean, here's the deal with him. You're a third round or a third string quarterback, fourth round quarterback drafted. You're not expected to play, and you come in the preseason and just light it up. Then you're not given a shot. You're still third stringer. In my mind, I was railing like, how is this dude not at least second stringer? Look at how he played.
Beat out Hoyer. He beat Hoyer. As far as I'm concerned, in the preseason, he beat out Hoyer for that second spot.
Yeah, and here's the situation with all of that is we know who Hoyer is. Great guy, great leader on the team for young guys, a great veteran, but he's not a starter at all. So why would you even have him in the second string instead of this young rookie who lit everybody up in the preseason, and let him get those second string reps and be out there? Well, that's McDaniels. He may be a genius offensive coordinator, but he doesn't understand people. And so you get thrown into the mix when Jimmy G goes down, and you're told to throw the ball almost 40 times as a third string guy, just because all the pressure was on McDaniels. Like, you can't start Hoyer. You got to see what you got with Aiden. And I think McDaniels intentionally tried to set him up in that first Chargers game by having him throw the ball. I think it was 38 times.
And you had no one. You had no help on that edge
with Khalil Mack. Exactly.
Yeah,
you double team Khalil Mack twice the whole game.
Yeah,
and
yet still, even with all of that, he still performed way above expectations of a third string quarterback.
Actually, if you look at that game, he still outperformed Justin Herbert.
Yeah.
Even with those sacks, interceptions, and fumbles, he outperformed Herbert. And Savage and I
he almost won that game too.
Yeah.
We've talked about how you put in a rookie quarterback with a rookie head coach, a offensive coordinator that's never called a play in his life, and he still goes 5-5.
And not only that, I mean, if you look at everybody wants to talk about the KC game. Oh, he only threw 63 yards.
And the Minnesota game.
Yeah, and the Minnesota game. Now, the Minnesota game, again, I mean, I can make all kinds of excuses for him. It's a team sport, and we were in the red zone. We could have kicked field goal twice, and we didn't.
Well,
so
I'll go this. The KC game. AP even said,
he
this coming from the coach's mouth, he changed the game plan in the second quarter because of what the defense and the running game was doing.
Yep, he played his cards right.
From being asked to throw the ball to manage the game, and he did that and won that game.
Yeah.
The Minnesota game, okay, that was a defensive game, plain and simple. Both sides, both defense were doing their job. Like you said, should we hit the field goal? Okay, that would have tied the game, right? At the end of the game when it goes. That was on the coach. That was an AP faux pas because he was a rookie head coach.
And
he was trying to go.
We had fumbles in that game. We had drop passes in that game. Not everything's on the quarterback. But my thing is, when I talk about Aiden O'Connell on my show, it's one, let's compare him to great quarterbacks. Compare him to Tom Brady's rookie year. Compare him to Peyton Manning. No dispute whatsoever. Those are Hall of Famers. Yeah, better stats than both of them.
Well,
Peyton Manning threw 28 interceptions his rookie year. 28.
Hold on. You said Tom Brady. And the funny thing is, go to the fucking Rush, Max Crosby podcast, and who does Aiden O'Connell base his or try to copy his game behind? Who does he try to emulate? Tom Brady. He's a Tom Brady type quarterback, and Tom Brady wasn't a mobile quarterback. Tom Brady learned how to read defenses, and that's what O'Connell needs to do.
In fact, Tom Brady was more mobile than Peyton Manning. And
you know
what I'm saying? So it's like you've got everybody says, well, we have to have the mobile quarterback. I disagree. You don't have to. It's what your team is built for, right? And so the Raiders right now are built that we could go either way. We could go Gardner Minshew. We've got the talent for him to play off script and make stuff up as he goes. But we also have the talent now, as long as Aiden O'Connell has time in the pocket, he'll tear you up. And if you go back and you look at his last 5 games, 9 touchdowns, 1 interception, he outperformed all of the first round quarterbacks that were drafted the same year.
Well, if you actually look at it overall for the season, when those all quarterbacks drafted, Aiden O'Connell was number 2.
Yep, right behind.
He had only one person who had a spectacular season, and that was CJ Stroud.
Yep. So that's why I said now. I mean, I've never said Aiden O'Connell is going to be better than Peyton Manning or Tom Brady. I've never said he's going to be a Hall of Famer or even a Pro Bowler. But what I have said over and over again is, if you think that Aiden O'Connell is going to not be the starter week 1 because of the fact that they're paying Minshew $25 million, $15 million of it guaranteed, then you don't really understand football, because that's not starter pay money. That's too high. That's a high-end backup. That's a little bit too high to be a backup, but it's not enough to be a starter. So that's not a guarantee that he's going to be the starter. It's very much, if you just look at what Antonio Pierce has said, this is Aiden O'Connell. It goes through Aiden O'Connell. If we're going to have a different quarterback, I don't care if we draft first overall and get a superstar guy. You have to go through Aiden O'Connell. And if you can't beat him out, and it's not, you're just at the same level, and then you're at the same level, so I'm going to go with Minshew because he's making more money. No, you have to beat him. Like, you got to be up here. And so if anybody thinks that, and I get the comments all the time on my show, like, oh, Aiden O'Connell's trash, he's just Carr 2.0, blah, blah, blah. Well, first of all, Carr wasn't trash. Second of all, he's not Carr. He's different, right? He was a third string guy who got thrown into the mix and mastered one of the most difficult playbooks in the NFL. And not because really it's a genius level, but because he put so much crap in there to make him seem like he was a genius in Josh McDaniels. But he was able to master that and pick it up and really not miss a beat with it. And as he got a few games under his belt, you started to see that potential that he has. He was scrambling out of the pocket. He was moving in the pocket. The game started to slow down, and he started to get that pocket awareness, which obviously he didn't have at all in his first game. What rookie would? And so I always say that you got to look at a player's progression. Cam Newton on his show made a fantastic analogy where he was talking about his own experience and how Carolina threw him in too early. And the coach came to him and told him, hey, are you ready? And he's like, oh, yeah, I'm ready. In the back of his mind, he's like, hell no, I'm not ready. You know what I mean? It takes these quarterbacks 2-3 years to really master the system. And then that's what you're going to know after 2 or 3 years. But in the NFL today, it's like, if you're a new quarterback on a team, whether you're a rookie or you're a free agent, if you don't get us at least to a divisional championship, then you're garbage. Get rid of you. And it's like people don't understand it's the hardest position in football to play, and therefore it's
in
going to take the
sports,
longest
in
time.
sports.
Yeah.
I'll go this far, and Savage could vouch for this. I said it early on in our podcast. Aiden O'Connell, what you saw with what he had is a plus. You're talking about a guy who did not have anything in his favor. Third stringer, didn't get to start with the starters. I even said when it came to the free agents, my first pick was Kirk Cousins. Atlanta fucked that up for us because they cheated and got to him way early, and nobody was going to get him. My second choice was Gardner Minshew. And I literally said, when it comes to Gardner Minshew, one of two things are going to happen. He will be a great backup to help coach Aiden O'Connell if O'Connell wins the job. If Minshew happens to win the job, O'Connell can learn a lot from Minshew, and next year you're going to have a different story.
Well, I'm glad we didn't get Kirk Cousins. And here's why. He had a very similar injury to Aaron Rodgers, except Aaron Rodgers had his in week 1. Kirk Cousins had his, week 7 or 8?
About
something like that.
He's not even
around trade deadline.
I will be absolutely shocked if he even starts week 4. So you're going to go and pay an awful lot amount of money.
Well,
for
I didn't want him for $180 million. I didn't want that. Even let's say you got him for $100 million, he's a guy that's not going to be able to start for you most likely until week 3, week 4 maybe. And now once you have an Achilles tear, you're susceptible at any time. Yep.
To get re-injured very easily. And he's already he's a great quarterback, but Gardner Minshew doesn't have all the yards and all the touchdowns. But what Gardner Minshew gives you is 2 things: healthiness and off-platform playability. And he's just a dog out there. He just wins games.
And the mobility. Well, I'm going to say the mobility. He moves around and scrambles more.
Yeah.
He's that in between of a mobile quarterback and a running quarterback. A mobile quarterback, as we said on this show, is somebody who moves around the pocket or slides out the pocket.
Extend
and
plays.
A running quarterback is more like the Lamar Jacksons, the guys who want to take off and run.
Yeah.
Minshew is that in between.
Yep.
Which
is what is successful in the NFL. If you just look at Kansas City Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes is not a running quarterback. He's a mobile quarterback.
He's the mobile quarterback.
Yeah.
But he doesn't have the arm that AOC has.
Yeah.
So,
and AOC I think has 2 things. Intelligence. He's very smart. This kid, again, anybody that can master McDaniel's playbook in the preseason even and do as good as he did, and then be able to come in and play at the NFL level as a starter and do as good as he did. Not perfect, but I mean, he certainly was above all expectations of him. And then with that being said, with all the turmoil of McDaniel's destroying the team atmosphere, and then him getting fired, and then new interim head coach, you don't have that stability. For me, and to make the progression that he made throughout the season to where he ended it off on a very high note. I mean, he was a part of the Raiders history making against the Chargers and putting up 63 points, which, I mean, this is the thing I love about him. He's such a humble dude. When he's asked about that, he's like, well, we did have a pretty good defense. Like, he doesn't even take credit for the fact that he threw 4 touchdowns. Right. So it's like, I love him. I think he's got a very high potential, but I also love the fact that, Gardner Minshew also has a pretty high ceiling, and he gets dogged on for, being in the league for a few years now, but not really winning playoffs or, anything like that. Or if he was so good, he'd be a starter the entire time. Maybe he's not a starter, but he is probably the best backup quarterback in the NFL. And so if Aiden O'Connell does get injured, God forbid, or he doesn't pan out. Like he has that sophomore slump and he's just terrible, which I don't believe he will be. But let's say that happened. Isn't it a luxury to have a guy like Minshew?
Yeah.
Because we could have had a guy like Hoyer as the backup.
You go one step further on that. The biggest comparison that's been done. But who's the Jacksonville fucking quarterback?
Oh, Lawrence.
Or Lawrence.
Trevor Lawrence.
Right?
Trevor Lawrence.
Same amount, damn near the same amount of games. Yeah. Minshew, if you put the numbers together between Lawrence, who just got the contract and got, big paycheck, and Minshew's better than Lawrence.
I agree. I think Justin Herbert and Lawrence are the two most oversold quarterbacks in the NFL right now.
And well, what I had said about last year when AP took over and they threw in Aiden O'Connell, my mindset was, you know what? We don't know where this is going to go, because when they fired McDaniels, that was basically the offensive coordinator. So my mindset was, you know what? O'Connell's the guy. Treat these next, 9 games as like an extended preseason, going into next year. And if AP is a coach, which he now has the interim off of him, then like there's familiarity going into the next year. So it's not a brand new coach with these players trying to figure out who's who and what's what. You already had that, the familiarity from last season carried over to this upcoming season. And that's the way I kind of took it, was just throw him out there, let him take his hits, let him take his, whatever, but just let him understand the NFL game, understand the speed. And and with them trying to install a new offense every week, because the stuff that McDaniels had just didn't work. And him just, what Hondo had said, Carpenter, it's like 40 plays with the Raiders offensive plays versus 140 plays on the other team. So they were trying to make do with this makeshift offense. And for someone, O'Connell, who didn't really have a full arsenal of plays, or Bo Hardigree had a full arsenal of plays or that experience, I mean, who's to say coming into this season with Lou Getsy and the new, with Brock Bowers, that they drafted, who's to say that? Just wait and see, because maybe he can light up the league. And I like the fact that people, underdog, like Al Davis. I don't know. I root for the underdog. So, yeah.
Yeah, just go and look at what Wu said on my podcast today when I asked him about the two quarterbacks. Like, they're both phenomenal. They both have different play styles. And I asked him, I said, well, you looking at it as a defensive player, who would you rather go against? The mobile guy who plays off script in Minshew, or the super smart, accurate, strong arm, great touch guy like Aiden O'Connell? And he said, pick your poison. Whichever way it goes, pick your poison, because they're going to tear you up. With all the offensive weapons that we have and the defense that we have, pick your poison. All right. So that's, that has me fired up. Because we've never really been in that situation. A lot of guys say, well, Derek Carr had Mariota for a little while. Look, Mariota was never good. Never. And he couldn't stay healthy. So that's there was never like a good second option. And we have that now, at least for 2 years with Minshew. And I'm happy about it. But I am team AOC. Not because I play favoritism, but I just look at the facts, and the facts is Antonio Pierce chose him over Jimmy G. Antonio Pierce is now the head coach. Do you think he's not going to choose him again this year?
Yeah.
Right. Just not going to happen.
Can't argue with that one right there. That is a hell of a statement right there.
Because I've had literally people come in the comments and be like, you're crazy if you think they're going to start Aiden O'Connell over Minshew, and they just paid Minshew $25 million. How much were we paying Jimmy G?
And I want to make one last note, because I know we're already past the 3-hour mark and we all got to go. But if you remember, the Raiders went and traded for Matt Flynn from the Seahawks Terrell Pryor started that season. If you remember, the Raiders traded for, well, I don't know if they traded or if they got it from a free agent, but they got Matt Schaub from Houston.
Yeah.
Derek Carr started
Free
that
agent.
season.
He was a free agent.
Okay, he was a free agent.
Yeah,
Derek Carr started that season. So just because a player came in, whatever how much money they got or how they acquired him, if it doesn't translate in training camp going into the season, and if it's still an open position, you never know. You never know. And I'm Team Ramrod. I'm Team AOC. So
Me too.
I'm nothing
Me
against
too.
Minshew. If Minshew goes in, Minshew, he might have that Gannon, bouncing around, maybe find a home and take us to three straight West titles and AFC championship games and maybe the Super Bowl and whatever. But all I'm saying is we're in a good spot right now, and we just gotta just ride that wave. It might not happen this year, but just have patience. We already dealt with 20 plus years of losing. Let's just have patience. We have a new enthusiasm that we didn't have the last 2 years. So just go with it. Stop hating so much. Just go with it. The Raiders are coming back because we have someone that understands the Raider way, the Raider Mystique and AP, and let's just ride it.
And with that, I always like to ask, what are your guys' thoughts on the end of the season record? I'm on record saying we're going 14-3, and MC Raider said that if we go 14-3, that he's gonna buy me a jersey and get it signed for me. And so I told him, well, if we win 13 games and there's at least one more game, he's got to go live with me so that way I can rub it in his face when we go 14-3, and he has to.
I've got those numbers. I've got those numbers because we did that show. Raider Savage has us going 12-5.
Okay, respect.
I was trying to be realistic and not trying to be a Raider fan, but I said nah. Yeah.
And now we have another guy who comes on. You watched the show last week, Raider Man. He has us going 13-4.
Okay, respect.
And I got us going 11-6.
So I'm the most optimistic, probably because I'm super biased as a Raiders fan, and I can't.
I said 17-0.
Bro, I always say 17-0 before the papers start. On paper.
Yeah. I'm trying to.
I was trying to be realistic. I was trying to be realistic.
Yeah, I think 14-3 is realistic. I think we split with KC.
Yes, I agree with that.
I think we sweep the rest, the Chargers and the Broncos. And then, there's a couple of tough games that we're going to have this year. And so I think, we probably have 3 off games that we're just not firing on all cylinders. But I think our defense is going to be top 3 this year. And anytime you have a top 3 defense, it's hard not to win games.
I've said
everybody talks about Patrick Mahomes like he's the greatest thing since, the invention of the wheel. He is a good quarterback, but he's also had a top 5 defense every time he's won a Super Bowl. Defense wins games. It's the whole reason why my channel is the Raider D podcast, because defense wins championships. So,
yep. Yeah. It comes down to the trenches.
Yep.
Offensive defensive line is what's going to win you games. And I think our offensive line has upgraded. That defensive line definitely upgraded with Wilkinson. And people are sleeping on Tyree Wilson. They're sleeping on him because of last year. They don't understand the foot injury he had.
Yeah.
And then with Jenkins and Adams being able to rotate in and everything.
Don't forget about Coach.
D-line is going to help the secondary. Everyone says we need secondary. No, that D-line is going to help the secondary so damn much. Our secondary is going to look elite.
Right. Jacorian Bennett got a lot of heat last year. So far, he is on fire in OTA.
He was a rookie. He was getting picked on.
Yeah. So we cannot sleep on Jacorian Bennett. He has elite speed, and if he picks things up, and he's able to fly free, and then Jack Jones. Who said it today?
40 steps.
Yeah.
The rookie Trey
Taylor.
Trey Taylor. I mean, we got so much shit right there that people are sleeping on. And with that D line, it's only going to make them better.
Yep. And that even Wu said that today. He is a corner. And he said in today's football, you can't even touch receivers. It's not like the old days. So teams that are going to win are teams that have a dominant defensive line And he's like, I play with these guys. I've been practicing with these guys. I've been, in meetings with these guys. I don't think there's a better defensive line than the Raiders have right now. And that's going to make our job as DBs so much easier. And I'm excited. I'm excited. And Jack Jones, he's got that Michael Jordan-esque. There are cornerbacks who, when they get an interception, they're just trying to get as many yards as they can until they get tackled. And they just kind of got their head down and everything. Jack Jones, when he intercepts the ball, it's like Michael Jordan air going through and dunking with his legs. You know what I mean? It's like iconic. It's like a work of art when you see him pick something off and the way that he plays. And I asked Wu about that, and he said, oh, yeah, dude is Michael Jordan in football. You know what I mean? People don't even know yet. They haven't even seen what Jack Jones is going to be at this point right now. So, man, I'm excited. I'm more excited this year than I have been in the past 20 years with the Raiders. Let's just keep it rolling. Like you said, Savage, let's keep it rolling.
I agree with that.
So I guess with that, it was a great show.
A great 3-hour show.
Yeah.
Hey, look, I want to thank Jon Kingdon for coming on.
Yep.
Giving us all that history that he did. I mean, to me, that was the best part of the show. No offense, Raider D, but that's
absolutely
the best part of the show. But I do want to thank you too for coming on and trying to, coming on after that, well, during that and after that. I know you and me went back and forth, and with all this, and we appreciate you shouting out us on your show, and coming on to our show, collabing with us. This was our best show, and I think this is a big deal. I just want to thank everybody for being on it, and we appreciate more than you could ever know you guys being on the show.
Man, I'm excited. Like, we're definitely going to get you guys on my show. Got to get you on Hot Beaver show over at Raider Nation Hotspot. He has a fantastic show as well.
Let us go. We would gladly come on.
Yeah, just keep growing and get real Raiders voices out there and kind of drown out the fake ones.
Yeah,
I'll leave it at that.
No,
my wife literally said, "Babe, you got to stop doing that because you love to fight." And I'm like, "All right."
Well, we let's just say we share a time slot ish with. We'll just leave it questionable. Let's just say questionable. And if they're watching, I hope you enjoyed the knowledge. So
yeah, for sure.
I can't wait to hear it on your show next week or tomorrow or whatever. But whatever. But we thank you very much. Go to Raider D's podcast. It's in the description. Go over there, check out the videos. But most importantly, make sure you subscribe to him. Like Asylum said, we appreciate you pushing our show out. On your show was last night? My days run all together.
Oh, I've done it a few times now.
No, he's done it a few times. He did today, and he did it his last show. He shouted us out, even put us in his description and everything. And like I said, we appreciate that. Yes, we're growing, but we appreciate all the help we get in that shit. And
yeah, for sure.
I will hit you up, and whenever you want us on a show, you let me know. We will get it worked out. I'll forget the name of the other guy you just said.
Oh, Hot Beavers, Raider Nation Hotspot.
Yeah, Hotspot. There you go. Yeah. Get us on that. We will definitely step in and do our best on those shows too.
For sure.
All right. With that said, like Anna said, have a safe 4th. And happy Al Davis Eve. I'm not going to call it 4th of July. I'm going to call it Al Davis Eve. Yeah. Happy birthday, Al Davis. You'll be 95 years old. With that said, any last comments, words, or anything, guys? Raiders! Like we end. Who do you got it? You got it, Asylum?
I'm ready.
Okay, like we end every show, because I keep his memory alive. He passed away a couple years back. Raider Milt, original Oakland Raider fan. That Man Talk Mess, diehard Raider fan, my old high school football coach. Like we end every show with the message from Raider Milt. Everybody out there, have a safe fourth. Do not. Who was a giant that lost his fingers? You said saw him the other day.
Paul Pierre.
Don't be a Paul Pierre. Don't shoot fireworks in your hands. Keep your fingers. If you're a guy, keep your fingers. Your woman will love it. All right, then, with that said, everybody have a safe fourth. And once again, thank you, Jon Kingdon. And once again, thank you very much, Raider D, for coming on to our show. Yeah. All right, then. Have a good night, Raider Nation, and take care.
All you other NFL teams, your tailgates are weak. Your teams are weak. We might be down right now, but it doesn't take away the history. And all you Raiders out there need to know your fucking history of who the fuck you playing for and where the fuck you're playing. Damn it. Oh, and by the way, I won my last cage fight. Again, I'm still undefeated. And you NFL motherfuckers out there that you think you want some, come on and get some anytime.